My sister sabotaged my life from the inside and broke into my apartment. So I turned the footage over to the police and gave her name to the FBI. My oldest sister Kendra believed she was the most honest person to ever walk the globe. At the dinner table she would begin discussing who had gained and lost weight, as well as her impressions of everyone else's overall appearance. None of us would even participate, and if we criticized, she'd say she was just being honest. Another time, she said my skin looked awful, like a cockroach being chewed apart by a human. I rolled my eyes. It wasn't anything new, and the family had become accustomed to her BS. To be honest, I was pleased to cease asking her to future family occasions, but my aunt insisted on inviting her, promising that one day she'd grow out of it. Boy, was she mistaken. For our baby cousin's birthday one year, she emailed the family group chat and asked if she could introduce us to her boyfriend Miles for the first time. I expected him to be just as bad as Kendra. I was about to flatly refuse her plea, but everyone responded before I could, and because my family is so kind, they of course said yes. SMH. He appeared pleasant at first, the type of guy who greets the pet dog before greeting anybody else and holds open every door for you. But I never stopped being skeptical. The birthday kid, Leo, looked gorgeous. He was wearing a small blue onesie with balloon patterns all over it, and he did not cry once. He only wanted to embrace and play peekaboo. My uncles, my boisterous aunts, my divorced parents, and everyone else came out to support Leo. It was held at one of those kids' party places with everything: arcade, bowling, laser tag, ball pit, and so on. However, Kendra had managed to sneak in alcohol. We were all sitting there, eating pizza that tasted like plastic, when I saw she was drunk. Actually, all the adults noticed because you could smell it on her breath, and she spoke as if she knew everything about how the world operated. Miles sat next to her in the tiny orange chair as she exclaimed about how honest she is, and described why our cousin was wasting her time at community college. This is the literal definition of bragging about oneself. I virtually leaped for excitement when the birthday cake arrived, thinking it meant Kendra had finally shut up, LOL. Everyone gathered around to sing happy birthday, as 5-year-old Leo clapped his small hands. My aunt pulled out this gorgeous dinosaur cake she had gotten up at the grocery store. As soon as we finished singing, Kendra jumped up to make a toast, sort of. Oh my gosh, you can't even make him a homemade cake? Do you even love him? Her voice was slurred, and she pointed with her red Solo cup. Furthermore, these decorations appear to have been sourced from a dollar store clearance bin. If you're going to have children, at least make an attempt. The other parents froze, and some children stopped eating their pizza mid-bite. My aunt's face turned red. Kendra kept going. I mean, I'm just being honest here. Pinterest exists for a reason. This is just sad. She was abruptly distracted by the sound of Leo crying. It was the heartbreaking wail that children let out when their world falls apart. Auntie Kendra says Mommy's cake is bad. And he wept. Mommy, why didn't you try? Miles sprang up so quickly that his chair tipped over. Kendra, pass me my stuff. We're done here. She laughed while still swaying. What? No way, I haven't even had cake yet. There's no we anymore, he said, turning to face her straight. I just watched you destroy a 5-year-old's birthday party. What kind of person does that? My uncle whispered, wow, from across the room. My cousin took out her phone. Kendra's jaw dropped. Babe, come on, I was just trying to help. Kids need to learn about standards. Standards? Miles's voice broke. He's 5. He thinks his mom hung the moon, and you just told him she doesn't love him enough. The entire room watched as if it were a movie. My aunt was still trying to console Leo, whose dinosaur shirt was saturated in tears. You're seriously breaking up with me here? Over this? Kendra's voice rose higher. Miles approached my aunt and offered her a $500 cash for the celebration. I'm sorry we ruined it. He then turned back to Kendra. Find your own ride home, and delete my number. He went toward the exit. Kendra stood paralyzed for around 3 seconds before reality struck. She grabbed her purse and dashed after him, heels clicking against the arcade floor, muttering something about overreacting. Dad said, good for him. Leo eventually stopped crying long enough to inquire. Is the mean lady gone? She was. We never saw her again, until a week later, that is, because that's when my aunt heard a knock on the door. It was not Kendra. It was CPS. Someone filed an anonymous report regarding alcohol being supplied to minors at a child's birthday party and inattentive parenting. The CPS lady arrived at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday. My aunt called me crying, barely able to speak. She elaborated. This woman in a gray suit was asking all these questions about the party. Did she serve alcohol to children? Were there proper safety measures in place? Was the venue appropriately supervised? The investigator carried a clipboard and took notes in clean handwriting. My aunt continued saying that it was Kendra who brought the alcohol. Nobody realized she had it until she was completely hammered. She gave the investigator the party location receipt, which proved it was an alcohol-free setting. But the investigator simply kept jotting down information, her attitude neutral and professional. She requested the names of all attendees, as well as phone numbers and, if feasible, email addresses. My aunt had to give them, opening up the party invitation list on her phone with trembling fingers. The lady stated that she will be contacting people to verify the story. I received my call 2 days later while I was at work. The investigator requested me to explain what happened at the party. I told her everything. How Kendra sneaked the wine into her purse, how she made Leo cry on his birthday, and how Miles abandoned her right in front of everyone. The investigator inquired as to whether my aunt was providing adequate supervision. I corrected myself. Of course she was. She was constantly checking on all the kids, making sure everyone was safe and having fun. She inquired whether there were any other troubling habits. I said, no, my aunt was a wonderful mother. She thanked me and hung up. However, that was not the end of it. Not even close. My aunt had to make 3 more home visits. They investigated her refrigerator to see if she had kept booze where Leo could get to it. They checked Leo's room for safety risks. They interviewed him without her presence, which scared her. He kept questioning whether he was in trouble for crying at his celebration. It crushed my aunt's heart. She told me he began having dreams about the unpleasant lady returning. She had to attend parenting classes every Saturday for 6 weeks, driving 45 minutes each way. Missing them meant risking losing Leo. She had to pay for them herself, $50 per class plus gas money, all because of that anonymous tip. We knew it was Kendra. Who else would know such specifics about the party? Who else would be so petty and vindictive? But we couldn't prove it. The investigator refused to reveal who created the report, citing privacy rules or whatever. My relative initiated a group text without Kendra to keep everyone informed. We provided screenshots of the bizarre texts Kendra was sending to various family members, alternating between acting victim and making threats. Miles then contacted me on Facebook. He sent me a long mail apologizing for everything. He felt responsible for introducing Kendra into our lives. He said she had been texting him nonstop from various numbers. First, she begged him to accept her back, sending long paragraphs about how she would change. Then she began claiming she was pregnant. He knew she was lying since they were usually cautious. Plus, the time frame didn't match. She claimed to be 3 months along when they'd only been dating for 2. But she continued to send him ultrasound photographs she discovered online. He did a reverse search and found it on a pregnant blog from 2015. He blocked each new number, but she kept creating more. She even made bogus social media personas to message him. He was considering replacing his phone completely and even obtaining a restraining order. I thanked him for his apology and assured him it was not his fault. He appeared like a kind guy who got mixed up with the wrong person. We all make blunders like this. He asked whether he might assist with the CPS investigation, perhaps by writing a statement regarding what had occurred. I promised to let him know if we needed anything. That's when things became pretty strange. My cousin Sophie began receiving strange messages on Instagram from her own account. But she was not sending them. Someone had made a phony profile with her photos and was messaging all of her friends, stating negative things about other family members. The phony Sophie was telling people that our grandmother was senile and shouldn't be trusted with money, that my uncle Gary was cheating on his wife, and that my other cousin was failing out of college due to substance abuse. Sophie spent hours attempting to get Instagram to remove the bogus account. She reported it about 20 times. Nothing occurred. Meanwhile, her true friends were perplexed, and several stopped talking to her, believing she had gone insane. She had to message everyone individually and explain that it wasn't her. Some immediately trusted her, but others remained doubtful, particularly those who had previously been harmed by the vicious messages. Then my Uncle Richard discovered a bogus Facebook profile using his name. This one was shared in local community groups, sparking debates about politics and religion, and making racist remarks on news items. His real co-workers noticed it, and HR summoned him for a meeting. He had to establish that he wasn't the one posting that rubbish. The discussion lasted 2 hours, and Richard had to display his real Facebook login history and explain why someone would mimic him online. We realized quite immediately that this was Kendra's doing. The bogus profiles all featured images from family occasions she had attended. Some of the images were unique to her, such as those she snapped with her phone. The angles were specific, the moments were candid, and the images were unquestionably not for public consumption. But again, we were unable to show anything. The accounts were created using random email addresses. Facebook and Instagram did not take our reports seriously. The worst one was when she created a false profile for my mother. She used it to remark on all of my mother's actual friends' posts, claiming their children were unattractive or their cooking was horrible. My mother lost 3 friendships over it before she even realized what was going on. One lady blocked her everywhere and refused to listen when Mom attempted to explain in the grocery store. Mom returned home from her shopping trip in tears. Her ice cream had melted after she remained in the parking lot crying for 20 minutes. My father started chronicling everything. He created a spreadsheet containing dates, times, and screenshots. He purchased a printer particularly for this purpose, claiming we required actual copies of everything. He stated we might need it later for legal issues, but lawyers are costly, and no one wanted to spend hundreds of dollars on this family drama. Kendra showed up to Leo's daycare. My aunt received the call when she was at work. The daycare director said that a woman claiming to be Leo's aunt attempted to take him up. She knew his whole name, date of birth, dinosaur backpack, and peanut allergy. But the staff recognized her from the description my aunt provided following the birthday party incident. They kept Leo inside and informed Kendra that she wasn't on the pickup list. Kendra supposedly caused a large disturbance by ranting about family rights and how dare they separate her from her nephew. She said that my aunt was an unfit mother, and she was only trying to help. She claimed to have documents showing her authorization, brandishing papers that turned out to be printouts of family photographs. The childcare phoned the police, but Kendra fled before they arrived. She drove out of the parking lot so quickly that she knocked over their sandwich board sign and left tire prints on the asphalt. My aunt had to leave work immediately to pick up Leo. Her supervisor was tolerant, but you could see he was tired of the drama. She had already missed days for CPS visits and parenting seminars. Now this. She began looking over her shoulder everywhere, terrified that Kendra would attempt again. She even began taking new routes to daycare, never going the same way twice. That weekend, we held a family meeting at my parents' place. Everyone came, except Kendra. We sat in the living room, eating chips and trying to figure out what to do. My uncle suggested we all block her on everything. My cousin suggested we fight back by creating phony profiles of her. My father told us to be calm and film everything. The talk went on in circles for hours, with everyone becoming increasingly irritated as the evening progressed. My aunt seemed weary. She had black circles under her eyes and was constantly checking her phone, as if Kendra would appear. She said that her job promotion was now in threat. Her boss had received anonymous emails claiming she was an alcoholic who endangered children. The emails featured warped accounts of what happened at the birthday party, implying that my aunt provided the wine and encouraged underage drinking. She had to attend another meeting with HR, present them the CPS report that cleared her, and explain the entire family scenario. They believed her, but stated they needed to look into any complaints. The promotion was put on hold indefinitely. She'd been there for 8 years, with a spotless record, and now this. When she told us how unjust everything was, her voice cracked. Miles texted me again that night. He had screenshots of Kendra's most recent communications. She stopped claiming pregnancy. Now she said he owed her money. She appeared to have made an investment in their future by purchasing clothes for their fictional child. She demanded $3,000 or threatened to sue him in small claims court. She had even made a list of items she had never purchased, such as cribs, strollers, and baby outfits. He joked about it, but I could tell he was stressed. He was a teacher and didn't have that much money laying around. He also showed me some interesting screenshots from when they were dating, in which Kendra discussed exacting revenge on those who had harmed her. Stories about co-workers who were dismissed after she filed anonymous complaints, and friends who ended relationships after she circulated rumors. She was proud of it, referring to it as karma with a little help. One communication in particular jumped out, in which she brags about evicting a roommate by filing noise complaints with the landlord, all because the roommate had eaten her yogurt once. I showed the screenshots to my father. He added them to his documentation folder, which was becoming quite thick. He'd started using dividers and color-coded tabs to categorize things by date and incident. He stated we might be able to demonstrate a pattern of behavior if we needed to pursue legal action. But none of us wanted to go that way. It seemed too extreme for family drama. Then my tires were cut. On Monday morning, I came out of my apartment to find all 4 tires flat. Not just flat, actually sliced. The sides contained these neat cuts. My neighbor stated he seen a woman in a hoodie lingering around my car the night before but didn't think much of it. He stated she'd been there for about 10 minutes, strolling around the automobile as if she was inspecting it. That night, the parking lot security camera fortunately failed to function. I had to call off work and pay for a tow truck. 4 new tires cost about $600. The tire guy stated that whomever did it knew what they were doing. The cuts were precisely placed to render the tires irreparably damaged. He stated he has seen it before in domestic disputes, which made me feel even worse about the situation. I made a police report, but without evidence, they couldn't do anything. The cop appeared bored, as if this was just another family disagreement that he didn't want to deal with. He assigned me a case number and instructed me to contact if anything else happened. He didn't even dust for fingerprints, as they do on TV. Something else happened during the same week. My cousin Eli received a call from his landlord. Someone had reported him for having too many people living in his apartment, claiming he was breaking his contract by subletting. Eli lived alone with his cat. The landlord needed to come inspect, so Eli had to take time off work. The entire process took 3 hours, with the landlord examining cupboards and seeking for signs of additional tenants. Another anonymous complaint, which we all knew was not truly anonymous. Fake social media profiles kept growing. New ones appeared faster than we could report them. They started messaging extended family members who were unaware of the Kendra situation. My great-aunt in Florida called to inquire why she had messaged my mother asking for money. The bogus account included recent images and even highlighted particular facts about great-aunt's new condo that only family members would know. We had to explain everything to family who rarely use the internet. Grandma's 80th birthday was approaching in 3 weeks. We'd been organizing it for months, renting a church hall, hiring a DJ, ordering catering for 75 guests, and inviting family from 3 states. It was meant to be a massive celebration of her life. We even created a video montage of family images paired to her favorite songs. Then the flowers came at Grandma's place. 24 red flowers with a message saying, "Can't wait to celebrate with you, love Kendra." Grandma contacted my mother in tears. She did not want controversy at her party, she simply wanted to see her family and enjoy cake in peace. But now she was afraid Kendra would turn up and spoil everything, just as she did at Leo's party. The roses sat on her kitchen table like a threat, lovely yet ominous. We tried to soothe Grandma down by telling her we'd manage it. But how do you prevent someone from showing up at a public event? We couldn't employ security for a grandmother's birthday party. It would be ridiculous. My uncle proposed having someone watch the door, but that felt strange too. We were torn between wanting to protect Grandma's special day and not turning it into some sort of fortress. I began to notice stuff going missing from my flat. Nothing huge at first. A phone charger here, a coffee mug there. Things I assumed I'd misplaced. But then my laptop charger, favorite sweater, and half of my utensils went. It was strange and frightening. I would seek for something and knew it was supposed to be there, but it wasn't. When I relayed it to my mother, she stated the same thing was happening at their residence. Dad's reading glasses went missing, as did Mom's phone case and other miscellaneous items that made no sense to steal. We began to worry whether we were all going insane, misplacing stuff due to stress. However, the pattern seemed too regular across multiple houses to be coincidental. Then my cousin discovered her spare key missing from behind her doormat. She always kept it handy in case of an emergency. She searched everywhere, but it was simply gone. She promptly replaced her locks, spending money she did not have. According to the locksmith, it appeared that the key had been used routinely. The lock revealed symptoms of excessive wear. He suggested she update to a deadbolt, which would cost extra. That's when I decided to install a camera in my apartment. Nothing fancy, just a cheap one I purchased online and connected to my phone. I carefully positioned it to protect my front door and kitchen area with no blind spots. I figured I'd catch myself sleepwalking or something to prove I was being paranoid. I was not being paranoid. 3 days after I set up the camera, I received a motion alert while at work. I opened the app and expected to see my cat. Instead, I spotted Kendra. She was in my apartment, rifling through the kitchen drawers as if she owned the place. She took a few forks and proceeded to my living room. I was stunned as she picked up a photo of our family and threw it into her luggage. She even took a Coke from my refrigerator before departing. I contacted the cops immediately and dashed home. By the time I arrived, she had left. But I had video of Kendra breaking into my flat, clear as day. The cop who arrived this time took the situation more seriously. He said this constituted criminal trespass and theft. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes, right away. But here's the problem. When they went to question Kendra, she had an alibi. She claimed she was at a job interview at the exact time of the break-in. I have documents to prove it. The officer stated that while the video was helpful, it would be difficult to prosecute without other proof. Maybe the person in the video simply looked like her. He pointed out that the quality was not ideal. Even though I could see it was her. I recognized her from the way she walked, the purse she carried, and the systematic manner in which she searched through my belongings. But it appears that wasn't enough. The case went nowhere. The police suggested that I alter my locks and perhaps buy better cameras. Thank you for your valuable suggestions, buddy. We held another family meeting, this time at my aunt's house. She had set 3 deadbolts on her door following the daycare incident. The house felt like a fortress. We exchanged notes on everything that had happened. Fake accounts, missing stuff, and complaints to employers. Dad brought his documentation folder, which was now a full binder with a backup kept in a safe deposit box. That's when we recognized the pattern. Kendra knew precisely when we wouldn't be home. She showed up at my apartment while I was at work, went to my parents' house for their weekly grocery trip, then visited my cousin during her yoga session. She was following us somehow. The precision was unsettling. She never got it wrong about when we'd be out. My technologically competent relative worked it out. We have all shared Google Calendars from when we were organizing family gatherings. Kendra still had access. She could see every appointment, every job schedule, and every out-of-town trip. We had been unknowingly publicizing our schedules to her for months. The calendar even included locations for some activities, making it easier for her to find us. We immediately disabled her access and reset our passwords. But the harm had been done. She'd been following our habits like a stalker. It made my skin crawl just thinking about it. How long had she been observing and planning? We began going through our phones, deleting her from everything we could think of. Miles responded again with further screenshots. Kendra had escalated her request for $3,000 to threatening to sue him for emotional distress. She said that their split caused her to lose her job and become anxious. She sought $50,000 in damages. The texts were becoming longer and more bizarre, with strange capitalization and many exclamation points. Miles chuckled about it, but he did start looking for a lawyer just in case. He was a teacher, not a wealthy individual. This was quite stressful for him. He also said something unpleasant. Kendra had been telling everyone they were still dating. She arrived at his school during lunchtime, told the front desk she was his girlfriend, and brought him food. Security had to escort her out. She had made social media posts about their connection, identifying him in images from months ago as if they were new. Some of his co-workers had begun to question if he was okay after observing the commotion surrounding him. Things became worse in the week leading up to Grandma's party. My aunt's daycare stated they had been receiving hang-up calls all week. Someone repeatedly called and breathed into the phone before hanging up. They had improved their security systems and displayed Kendra's photo at the front desk, but it was impacting their business. Some parents were concerned about safety. One family had already moved daycares, citing security concerns. My mother's employer received a package addressed to her. Inside, there were printed screenshots of false social media posts that made it appear as if my mother had written nasty things about her co-workers. An anonymous note stated that they believed her manager should be aware of her true personality. Mom needed to attend another appointment with HR to explain. They believed her, but she was stressed out. She began having difficulties sleeping, frequently waking up at 3 a.m., with anxiety. Then came the letters to extended relatives, which were tangible letters mailed with stamps. They included images from family events with harsh remarks, pictures of relatives with circles around their faces and comments on their weight, clothing and lifestyle choices, all written to appear as if different family members were talking about each other. The handwriting was disguised, but similar enough to raise suspicions. My uncle in California called, upset, since he had received a letter from my father calling his wife a gold digger. My cousin in Texas received one from my aunt stating that her children were brats. The letters were intended to incite everyone to fight with one another, and they were effective. People were hurt and puzzled. Some relatives thought the letters were legitimate. Old familial conflicts were masterfully utilized. We spent hours on the phone doing damage control, explaining the scenario to distant family who had no idea why Kendra would do this. Some people believed us. Others assumed we were hiding up family drama. My mother cried after speaking with her sister, who accused her of always being critical. The bogus letter had tapped into their early insecurities. It took 3 more calls to persuade her sister that it was all Kendra's fault. I started cautiously checking my mail every day. My neighbors undoubtedly thought I was nuts because I would peep out the window when the mail truck came. I installed a lock on my mailbox, something I had no idea you could do. The hardware shop employee stated that many people have been doing it recently in order to avoid identity theft. He showed me 3 different types, and I chose the most secure. The documentation binder expanded into 2 binders, then 3. Dad spent the evening sorting everything chronologically. He constructed an index and organized episodes by category. He stated that if we ever needed to demonstrate a pattern of harassment, we would be prepared. But, honestly, it seemed hopeless. What could we actually do? She wasn't physically threatening us. She was just steadily damaging our life with one anonymous complaint at a time. When HR summoned me in for a meeting, my employment position became more problematic. They had gotten an email about me allegedly harassing a coworker. The email featured screenshots of inappropriate text messages I'd never sent to a colleague. They were plainly fake. The phone number wasn't even mine. But I had to sit there and defend myself, explain the family situation, and show them proof that the number wasn't mine. The meeting lasted 1 hour and seemed like an interrogation. My supervisor trusted me, but he stated they needed to examine any complaints. I noticed him looking at me differently thereafter, like if I were a drama he didn't want to deal with. I'd been there for 5 years with no problems, and now I was the employee with the crazy family submitting phony complaints. I began upgrading my resume just in case. My productivity suffered because I was continually concerned about what would happen next. 3 days before Grandma's party, we held an emergency family meeting. Everybody was on edge. Half of the household was squabbling over the letters. My aunt was fatigued from the CPS situation, which is still ongoing. My mother was concerned about job. I was paranoid about everything. We needed a plan for the party. The tension in the room was strong enough to cut with a knife. After all, my uncle advised hiring security, even if it was just one guy to watch the door. But Grandma instantly shut it down. She did not want her birthday to feel like a military mission. She just wanted a regular party with her family. But we all knew if Kendra showed up, things would be anything but regular. When Grandma mentioned it, her voice shook, and everyone became even more desperate to safeguard her day. We agreed on a compromise. We'd have 2 cousins alternate turns by the door, just hanging out. If Kendra showed up, they'd text the group chat and we'd handle things quietly. We would not make a scene until she did first. It wasn't the ideal strategy, but it was something. We even practiced how we would escort her out if needed. Miles offered to help. He said he'd park outside and wait for her automobile. If she showed up, he'd try to talk to her first, possibly persuading her to leave before she even entered. We appreciated the offer, but informed him he didn't have to participate. He insisted, claiming that he felt responsible for introducing her to our family. The remorse in his words was clear. The night before the party, I couldn't fall asleep. I kept looking at my camera app, expecting to see Kendra in my apartment again. I changed the locks, but still felt uncomfortable. Each noise made me jump. My cat undoubtedly thought I had lost my mind since I kept getting up to check the door. I ultimately gave up sleeping around 4 a.m. I just sat on my couch, watching Netflix. I was not the only one. The family group chat remained active all night, with people voicing their anxiety. My relative couldn't sleep because she was concerned about the false social media accounts. My aunt was anxious about Leo, who had asked if the cruel lady would attend Grandma's party. My mother had stress-baked 3 dozen cookies at 2 a.m. We were all a mess. I awoke on the morning of the party to texts from Miles. He'd been getting calls all night from different numbers, with Kendra crying, begging, threatening, then crying again. He has blocked 15 new numbers since midnight. He was still going to come and watch for her. He claimed he had purchased a new shirt for the occasion, wanting to appear well for Grandma, even if he was only waiting in his car. He appeared resolved to set things right somehow. We arrived at the church hall early to set everything. The decor were perfect, gold and white balloons, photos of Grandma over the years, and fresh flowers on each table. The catering smelt fantastic. The DJ was putting together music from Grandma's era. Everything was set for the perfect party. We had worked very hard to make this unique for her. Then we found the gift. It was sitting on the gift table, wrapped in silver paper and tied with a large red bow. The card read, "For Grandma, from your loving granddaughter Kendra." My stomach sank. She had already arrived, or someone had left it off for her. In any case, it felt like a bomb was resting among the typical presents. My father carefully lifted up and shook it. Nothing rattled. It wasn't heavy. It may have been clothing or something trivial. But we all knew Kendra wasn't doing anything innocent anymore. My uncle suggested we just throw it away. My aunt suggested we open it first to ensure it was not something that would upset Grandma. We stood there, fighting in whispers as the DJ tested his speakers. Finally, my cousin Tessa just grabbed it and ripped it open. Inside was a photo album. At first, the images of Grandma with all of us over the years appeared to be pleasant. Then we flipped through it. There was something wrong with every photograph. The faces were scratched out using red ink. Mean comments were left under each one. Grandma with her disappointing family appears in a Christmas shot. The people who never appreciated her was written under a birthday photo. It was psychotic stuff. We tossed it in the dumpster outside and promised not to tell Grandma. But suddenly everyone was on edge. If Kendra had previously been here, would she return? My cousins took up positions near the entryway early. Miles texted that he was in the parking lot, watching. We were as prepared as we could be. Guests began arriving at 2 p.m. Grandma looked stunning in her purple dress, which she had bought especially for today. She was overjoyed, hugging everyone and sobbing up over the decorations. For a time, it seemed like a regular family gathering. Children went around playing tag. Adults spoke over coffee. The DJ played all of Grandma's favorites. I began to relax a little. Then my cousin at the door messaged the group chat. "She's here." My heart began thumping. I looked toward the entryway and saw Kendra saunter in as if she owned the place. She was dressed up, carrying a present bag, and smiling at family who were unaware of all the trouble. Some of them smiled and hugged her, unaware of what she had been doing to us for months. Miles arrived out of nowhere and intercepted her near the dessert table. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see her face becoming angry. She tried to walk around him, but he kept getting in the way, not aggressive, yet persistent, like a basketball player on defense. More family began to notice something was amiss. My father and uncle moved in to help. They surrounded her casually, making the conversation appear regular, but Kendra's voice rose. "I have every right to be here. She's my grandmother too." People were beginning to stare. Children stopped playing to watch. This was just what we didn't want. Grandma saw the ruckus from across the room. Her face sank when she noticed Kendra. Her expression was sapped of happiness. She began walking over, perhaps to keep the peace. My mother attempted to divert her with cake, but Grandma wouldn't have it. "Kendra," Grandma remarked as she approached the gathering, "I think you should leave." The room became quiet. Even the children felt something significant was happening. Kendra's cheeks turned red. "Grandma, I just wanted to celebrate with you. I brought you a gift and everything." She held up the gift bag as proof that she belonged there. "After everything you've done to this family? Please leave." Grandma's voice was forceful and sad. You could tell it was breaking her heart. She despised conflict, particularly within her own party. Kendra laughed, but it was not a pleasant sound. "Everything I've done? They're the ones who turned you against me. I'm just honest, and they can't handle it." She grew louder with each word. Some relatives began pulling children away from the situation. "You called CPS on your own family," Grandma explained calmly. "You've been harassing everyone for months. That's not honesty, that's cruelty." The mask eventually slipped. Kendra's face had twisted into something nasty. "Fine. You want to know the truth? You've always loved them more than me. Every single family event, it's about everyone else. Poor little Leo and his stupid birthday, Tessa and her college graduation. But when I accomplished something? Nothing." She began pulling papers out of her purse and waving them around. "I documented everything. Every time you forget my birthday. Every time you praise them instead of me. I have proof of favoritism." The papers flew everywhere. Some resembled written text messages. Others were photographs with bizarre annotations. Miles came forward and began gathering the papers. "Kendra, stop, this isn't helping anything." She whirled on him, her eyes furious. "You were supposed to be on my side, but no, you fell for their act too. Poor innocent family, being terrorized by mean Kendra." My aunt spoke up. "You tried to kidnap my son from daycare," she said, her voice quivering with rage. "You've been breaking into our homes. You got me investigated by CPS. You nearly cost me my job. That's not about favoritism. That's about you being dangerous." Kendra laughed again. "Dangerous? I'm just showing you all what it feels like. To have your life disrupted. To have people judge you unfairly. To lose things that matter to you." She gazed around the room, noticing all the watching faces. "Every single one of you has said things about me behind my back. I know because I've heard you. Well, now you know how it feels to have people talk about you. Someone mumbled, "We need to call the police." But Grandma raised her hand. "Kendra, I'm giving you one chance. Leave now, peacefully. Get help, real help, or we will involve the authorities." Her speech remained calm, but tears streamed down her cheeks. For a brief moment, I thought Kendra may actually leave. She looked around at all of us, perhaps realizing how far she had pushed things. Then her gaze fell on the birthday cake, which had 3 tiers and was covered with purple flowers, with the words, "Happy 80th Birthday," written in gold frosting. Before anyone could stop her, she lunged at it. My cousin Eli was closest, and he grabbed her arm just as her hand touched the cake. They wrestled for a second, with Kendra yelling about injustice and lying. The cake wobbled perilously. Other relatives rushed in to aid. It took 4 people to move her away from the dessert table. She was still crying, with mascara dripping down her cheeks. Miles then brought out his phone. "I'm calling 911. This has gone too far." Kendra heard him, and something inside her snapped utterly. She broke free from the family who were holding her and dashed for the exit, knocking down a floral arrangement on the way. We heard her automobile pull out of the parking lot, tires squealing. The room fell silent for almost 10 seconds. Then Grandma began crying. Not quiet tears like before, but true weeping. My mother and aunt surrounded her and guided her to a chair. The celebration was officially ruined. The kids were crying because Grandma was crying. Adults stood around, horrified. But then something incredible occurred. My uncle rose up and clinked his fork on the glass. "Hey everyone, I know that was intense, but we're here for Grandma's 80th birthday. Kendra doesn't get to ruin that." He stepped up to the DJ booth and muttered something. Music began playing. "Can't Help Myself" by the Four Tops, Grandma's favorite song. My father joined in. "Come on, Ma. Dance with me." He extended his hand to Grandma. She shook her head at first, still crying, but he persevered and performed a silly dancing routine that made her grin through her tears. She finally took his hand and allowed him to take her to the dance floor. Others gradually joined in. The young kids began racing around again. Someone restored the flowers that had been knocked over. My aunt cut the cake that had survived the attack. Within 20 minutes, the party felt almost normal again. Almost. Miles found me by the punch bowl. "I'm really sorry about all this. I feel responsible." I told him not to apologize. No one blamed him. He explained that he had been recording Kendra's meltdown on his phone in case we needed it for legal purposes. Smart thinking. He also stated that he planned to file for a restraining order first thing Monday morning. The party concluded approximately 6 p.m. Grandma hugged everyone especially long and thanked them for staying, despite the drama. She seemed fine, but tired. The kind of tired that comes from mental exertion rather than physical effort. We packed up her gifts and the leftover cake. Nobody acknowledged the scene with Kendra, but it lingered in the air like smoke. My cousin discovered something strange while cleaning up. A little device wedged under one of the tables. It looked like a little recorder or GPS tracker. We had no idea how long it had been there, but it explained how Kendra always seemed to know where we were at events, even after we had disabled her calendar access. She had supplemented her computerized tracking with physical spy equipment. We gave it to Miles to use as proof for his restraining order. That night, the family group chat was once again active. However, this time it wasn't anxiety. People were sharing pleasant memories from the party, such as images of Grandma dancing and videos of the children playing. We were attempting to focus on the positive aspects. To make up for the drama, my mother suggested that we all send cards to Grandma and tell her how much she meant to us. Everyone agreed immediately. Monday morning brought news that Kendra had been arrested. Not for the party, but for something else. Remember the bogus social media accounts? It turned out she used one to threaten a local lawmaker who had blocked her on Twitter. The FBI takes that stuff seriously. They'd been investigating for weeks and had finally gathered enough evidence. The party meltdown was simply awful timing for her. Miles sent us the news piece. Kendra was facing federal accusations of cyber harassment and making threats. The research had revealed scores of fraudulent accounts, not just those targeting us. She'd been doing this to ex-coworkers, old classmates, and even random people who irritated her online. We were simply her main targets. The FBI discovered proof on her computer of this behavior over the course of several years. When CPS learned of my aunt's arrest, they closed her case immediately. The investigator apologized, stating they had to follow up on all reports but now realized it was malicious. Leo was finally able to quit worrying about the unpleasant lady. He asked if she was going to jail, and my aunt responded definitely, at least for a while. Over the next 2 weeks, things gradually returned to normal. My mother's workplace ceased receiving complaints. The bogus social media accounts fell dormant. We could check our letters without feeling anxious. I stopped obsessively monitoring my apartment. It was strange how peaceful things got after months of commotion. Miles began dating a coworker named Sophie. They met when he came to get me for lunch one day. She thought he was cute, so I figured, why not introduce them? They hit it off right away. When we initially learned Kendra had a boyfriend, we had no idea what we were in for. It turned out he was a lovely guy who had gotten mixed up with the wrong person. We learned more about Kendra's arrest from the prosecution. She was looking serious. The FBI discovered hundreds of victims across several states. She had been operating a harassment campaign for years before she targeted us. We were actually fortunate. Some people lost their jobs, relationships, and even custody of their children as a result of her phony claims. The prosecutor stated that our documentation will be useful in the case. Grandmother decided to write Kendra a letter. We attempted to persuade her out of it, but she was adamant. She stated that despite everything, Kendra was still family. The letter was brief, saying just that she loved her and hoped she would find treatment in prison. Perhaps this was her lowest point, and she could recover. Classic grandma, always seeing the good in people. Kendra never wrote back. We learned via her court-appointed lawyer that she was accepting a plea agreement of 5 to 7 years in federal prison. She would also have to make restitution to her victims. The lawyer asked whether we wanted to provide victim impact statements. Some of us did, and some did not. I composed one about my dread of not feeling safe in my own home. My aunt wrote on how it impacted Leo. The sentencing occurred on a Tuesday. Only Miles attended court. He remarked Kendra looked strange, like she was smaller. She did not make eye contact with him. When the judge read the penalty, she simply nodded. There is no dramatic outburst, no allegation of being misunderstood, only acceptance. Miles stated that it was genuinely sad to watch. We had another family gathering for Thanksgiving. No one addressed Kendra, but her absence was felt. Grandma had placed a place for her out of habit, but she gently removed it before dinner. Leo was back to his cheerful self, playing with his cousins and consuming an excessive amount of pie. Finally, my aunt had received her promotion. Mom's workplace drama was forgotten. Even the extended family members who had received the unpleasant messages were present, and all fences had been repaired. Miles and Sophie become an official couple. He fit right in, working in the cooking and playing board games with the kids. Someone joked that he was the best thing to emerge from the Kendra mess. He laughed and said he was just happy to be part of a normal family again. We all understood what he meant. I still keep the camera in my flat, but I rarely check it. To ensure safety, the locks were replaced twice. Sometimes I wonder how one individual wreaked such havoc, how we all spent months looking over our shoulders, distrustful of everything. But ultimately, I'm relieved it's over and that we survived as a family. We don't talk about Kendra much anymore. When her name comes up, there's an awkward silence before someone shifts the topic. Grandma still has images of herself in old albums, but nobody recommends removing them. She was a part of our history, even if it is one we would prefer to forget. However, the family has grown closer together. Nothing like common pain can bring people together. Leo celebrated his 7th birthday last week with the same party location and dinosaur theme because he is hooked. However, this time there was no drama, no uninvited guests. There were no tears, only joyous ones when he unwrapped his presents. This time, my aunt prepared the cake herself. It was a T-Rex with chocolate frosting. It was asymmetrical and the frosting was uneven, but Leo declared it perfect. And it was. That's about all there is to say. Kendra is serving her sentence. We have moved on with our lives. The restraining order is still in effect, but we don't need it from prison. Miles and Sophie are talking about moving in together. Grandma turned 81 and we are already planning her next party. Life is good. Boring even. And after everything we've been through, dull is precisely what we wanted. Sometimes I worry if Kendra thinks about us in prison, if she regrets everything or still believes she was justified. But then I understand it isn't important. She made her decisions and accepted the consequences. We shielded our family and emerged stronger. That is what matters. That, and ensuring sure Leo's birthday is never ruined by someone who pretends to be honest. According to the prosecutor's most recent update, Kendra was undergoing therapy in prison. Maybe she'll really change. Perhaps she'll emerge as a different person. Or perhaps not. Either way, she is no longer our problem. We have birthdays to celebrate and memories to create. Good ones this time. The kind in which everyone leaves happy and no one contacts CPS. Parents and sister turned my daughter away on Christmas. No room at the table, they said. So I evicted them from the $250,000 home I paid for. At Christmas, I was working a double shift at the emergency room. My parents and sister informed my 16-year-old daughter that there was no place for her at the table. She had to drive home alone and celebrate Christmas in an empty house. I didn't create a scene. Instead, I took action. The next morning, my parents discovered a note at their door and screamed. On Christmas Eve, I arrived home about 11:45 p.m., completely exhausted. I'd done compressions on a man who claimed he was simply fatigued. He was also blue. That type of change. So when I spotted Sophie's boots near the entryway, my initial assumption was that someone was bleeding. Then I noticed her coat drooping against the armrest, her overnight bag still zipped, and her curled up on the couch in that tight, unnatural sleep position, as if she didn't trust the furniture. I waited there waiting for reasoning to catch up. She was meant to attend my folks' overnight tradition. She begged to drive herself only once, proud of her recently acquired license. She even departed early to be extra courteous. My husband and I were both working late nights, so the plan seemed reasonable, until it didn't. Sophie, I spoke softly. She opened her eyes immediately, like if she hadn't truly slept. Hey, why are you here? She sat up gently. They said there wasn't room. I blinked. Where is the room? At the table. Her voice broke midway through. She attempted to disguise it with another shrug. Did not work. They said they didn't expect me, and that there were already too many people. Grandma explained that she couldn't simply pull up another chair at the last minute. She appeared anxious, as if I were adding to her workload. You got there on time, right? Yeah. Right on time. She opened the door and appeared confused, as if I'd arrived for the wrong holiday. She stopped, then added. She also stated that there were no beds remaining. There was a backup excuse. She stated that they did not want me driving back late, but they also did not know where else to put me. So I left. Did someone offer to drive you home? Nope. I stared at her. Were you at least allowed to eat? Another shrug. The table was full. Maya sat in my customary seat. Grandpa spoke to her as if she were royalty. Nobody looked at me. Aunt Rachel nodded as Grandma added, "It's just a full house this year." So I left. She glanced at the table and said, "I made toast." I turned to see it. A single slice on a paper towel, cold and slightly curved. There's half a banana next to it. It was her Christmas supper. I felt a coil in my chest, not rage, not yet, just that cold, crystalline sensation before the shatter. I wasn't hungry anyway, she explained. Not really. That was when her eyes began to flood. She battled it. God, she tried. She looked up, blinked hard and bit her lip, as if she could chew her way out of the emotion. They made it seem like I'd imposed, she said quietly. Like showing up after it was planned was rude. And then she cried quietly and slowly, like a faucet that won't turn off. I was going to bring a pie, she said, but I thought they'd have enough food already. I sat next to her and placed my arm around her shoulders. She leaned forward without hesitation, as if she was supporting herself out of hate. After a time, she wiped her nose against her sleeve. I know they don't like you, she told me. But I thought. She cut herself off. You thought you were just the kid, not part of it. She nodded. They didn't even say it meanly, she explained. Just as if it was a practical matter. Like I was a folding chair that they didn't have room for. I did not go to bed right away. I sat in the kitchen, looking at her still zipped bag. She wrapped it so carefully, chose the clothing my mother mentioned she loved, and brought a small tin of cookies she prepared herself. I opened the refrigerator. There was nothing spectacular there. We had not prepared a backup Christmas. Why should we? We trusted them. That's the part I couldn't get over. Not the chili cheese toast, or the scarcity of food. Not to mention that she drove home alone in the dark. They looked her in the eyes. This sweet, uncomfortable, brave girl who arrived on time with cookies and a smile, and said with 28 people inside, "There's no room for you." They did not mean no room. They were referring to someone other than you. The next morning my spouse arrived home. Sophie was still sleeping. I informed him what had happened. He stood there for a long period before saying, "So, what do we do now?" I didn't respond. Not yet. But I already knew. Because there's turning the other cheek and then turning down a 16-year-old who simply wants to be included. They picked the latter. I didn't create a scene. I took action instead. The next morning, my parents discovered a note at their door and screamed. And began screaming. I don't recall the first time I was nicknamed the weird one. Probably before I understood what the term meant. When I was 6, I discovered a dead bird and asked if I could dissect it. Not to be creepy, but I wanted to know how it worked. My mother smacked the kitchen counter and asked, "Jesus, Emma, what is wrong with you?" My sister Rachel screamed and informed everyone that I was attempting to build a zombie. I was grounded for scaring her. That kind of established the tone. I adored anatomy books, wanted a microscope for Christmas, and inquired about blood flow during supper. At school, I was the one who raised her hand. In my family, that was enough to get you dubbed a show-off. Nobody else attended college. Most did not complete high school on their first try. I was the only one who studied during the commercials. By the time I was 12, my father had started joking, half joking, that I wasn't really his. "Too smart to be mine," he'd say. Then he would laugh. I once overheard him arguing with my mother while they thought I was sleeping. He inquired whether she had ever cheated on him, saying he had always wondered because I didn't resemble anyone in the family. I didn't get much sleep that night. Never inquired about it. Still have not. By high school, Rachel had mastered her position as the golden kid. She was noisy, likable, average in school, and an expert at spinning every failure into a narrative. People adored her. She understood how to cry on cue and made it clear to everyone that she was looking out for me, the poor, awkward one who couldn't take jokes. She used to call me doctor, freak in front of others. She changed it to doctor. Moneybags after I became a doctor. So, progress. When I received the scholarship, the entire ride, my folks were unusually silent. There is no celebration. No hugs. My mother inquired as to whom I expected to marry, as men dislike women who appear to be wiser than they are. I told her I might marry myself. She did not laugh. They did not give me a penny. I waited tables in medical school, performed shifts no one wanted, and returned home with painful feet and burnout in my bones. Meanwhile, my family believed I was living a dream. They made no visits. Years later, following my second residency, I landed my first steady job, which made me feel like I wasn't drowning. My husband and I met during an overnight shift, very romantic if you consider shared tiredness charming, and finally relocated to a place where we could afford more than instant noodles. And that's when the calls began. Can you help with the electricity bill? Can you co-sign the lease? Can you speak with a doctor friend regarding Uncle Pete's back lump? I did everything I could, most of it without hesitation. When my parents approached retirement, far too soon and with little savings, I stepped in. They had never bought a home, always rented. Poor credit, terrible luck, or whatever the excuse of the year was. So I purchased a small 2-bedroom house and handed them the keys. I told them it was a gift, and that I would handle the mortgage. The house is in my name, yet they live there as if it was theirs. Rent-free. The majority of utilities are covered. Medical issues, I have insurance coverage. Yes, I have never said no, until recently. Rachel called some months ago. Maya, her daughter, the one who can do no wrong, had been admitted to a top STEM summer camp. Rachel said, "She's got your brain," as if it were a compliment. This could change her life. I inquired how much. $1,200, she explained, but it's worth it. And you, among all people. That's when I stopped listening. Sophie never attended a summer camp like that. Not because she couldn't, she never asked. She's practical and thoughtful. She wouldn't conceive of demanding that much money from me, even if she could have. I told Rachel no, respectfully but firmly. I explained that I was already financing our parents' mortgage, medical payments, and emergencies. Perhaps she could apply for financial aid or a payment plan. Her tone changed quickly. "Wow, must be good to have everything and still be so frugal. She's your niece. You're just jealous that Maya is achieving success." That last one was funny. Or would have been if I hadn't heard my mother say something similar a week later when she assumed I was out of earshot. Apparently, I was holding Maya back, just as I had always done with Rachel, by being the brilliant one who made everyone else look awful. You already know this since you exist. I didn't resist it, explain, or justify. I simply said no. And I intended it. This was 3 weeks before Christmas. Sophie was pleased to attend Christmas dinner and claimed she felt grown up being trusted to drive herself. She packed an overnight bag and even wrapped small gifts for her younger cousins. I told her I would see her in the morning and asked her to text me when she arrived. She did. Everything appeared perfect. Hours later, I walked through our front door and realized the fine had seemingly been canceled. Sophie looked up from the couch with a weak smile, saying, "Please pretend this isn't a disaster." She told me in the lowest voice that Grandma had said there was no space at the table or anywhere else, despite the fact that she counted 28 chairs in use. A math problem with a single variable. Her. I listened. I let her explanation bounce about the room like a dropped luggage. Then I placed my arms around her and let silence do the talking. She fell asleep still wearing the sweater she'd chosen to wow them. When the house had settled, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the area where her Christmas supper should have been. I repeated every mortgage payment, every energy bill, every Kuwaiti dinar that had gone permanent. They had not ran out of room, they had ran out of gratitude. And they had exploited my daughter to issue the memo. That was when the switch flipped. No more explanations. No more polite negotiations. I didn't even consider if I'd act. Just how soon. We didn't say anything during the way over. My husband sat alongside me in silence, his hand lightly resting on my knee, like a grounding wire. Not quite comfortable, but sturdy. Present. That was sufficient. The morning after Christmas is always strange, foggy, as if the world is still hung over from candy and wrapping paper. I was hoped that the house would be unoccupied. It was not. There were still 2 extra vehicles in the driveway. I recognized one as Rachel's. The other possibly belongs to the relative who lingered late for leftovers. We got out. I grasped the envelope tightly. I had not slept. The shift, the situation with Sophie, the cold dinner tray on the counter that hadn't been cleaned up, it was all buzzing in the back of my mind like a blown fuse. I rang the doorbell. Waited. No one arrived. I rang again. Knocked. Nothing. "Let's just leave it," my spouse said gently. I stood for a second longer and then nodded. We walked back to the car. I gently nestled the mail behind the doorframe so it wouldn't blow away. I was opening the driver's side door when I heard it. A creak in the screen, a slippered footstep. I turned. My mother strolled out, wrapped in one of those fuzzy robes she always wore around the holidays, the ones she used to brag about obtaining at 90% off. She bent down, picked up the letter, opened it, and began reading. Her expression turned blank, then pale. Then she shouted, "David!" Her voice crackled like a broken wire. "David, get away of here, she is throwing us out." My father appeared at the door dressed in the clothing he wore yesterday. "What the hell?" Rachel followed, still dressed in her Christmas jammies and cradling a mug, as if she expected a nice morning. "What is going on?" My mother turned and pointed down the driveway as if I were a stray animal who had just urinated on her porch. "You ungrateful little—" We hopped in the car and drove away before I could hear the entire sentence. It didn't matter. I know the best hits. My phone was already vibrating when we arrived home. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again. The 6th time, I picked up. "How dare you?" my mother shrieked. There was no hello, no pause, and no attempt to show sympathy for Sophie. "You've lost your damn mind." I held the phone away from my ear. I could still hear my father yelling in the background. "If you do this, you're no daughter of ours," he yelled. They did not ask why. They made no inquiry into what had occurred. They did not even mention Sophie, not once. I hung up. They kept phoning. Rachel began texting. I believe one message literally stated, "This will ruin your reputation. Think about your career." Oh honey. My patients do not care where my parents live. By the evening, my phone appeared to have gone through a breakup. 32 missed calls, 14 messages, and 3 voicemails. One cousin even had the courage to message, "This is not my place, but it feels extreme. You only have one mom." I did not respond to any of them. The next morning there was a knock on the door. I peeked through the peephole. Of course it's my mother. She was standing on my porch in the same fuzzy robe, carrying the eviction letter, which was wrinkled and moist from being squeezed for 2 hours. I opened the door but did not welcome her inside. She did not wait. "Are you really doing this?" she hissed. "After what we've done for you?" I let that sit for a moment. Then I gently asked, "You mean the house I bought for you? Which bills did I pay? I arranged for health insurance because your Medicare did not cover your blood pressure medications." She flinched for milliseconds. Then she straightened, her gaze sharp. "We reared you. We gave you everything. You didn't even let my daughter eat dinner, I replied. That temporarily stopped her. But she recovered quickly. Do not be theatrical. We did not have enough chairs. There were 28 people there, I explained. Even a neighbor. Her lips were squeezed tight. I didn't send that letter to be cruel, I clarified. But if you think you can treat Sophie like she's disposable. Oh, for God's sake, she exclaimed, suddenly enthusiastic again. Stop acting as if we are monsters. You are the one pulling your family apart due to a misunderstanding. And now you're threatening your parents. She held up the letter as if it were evidence in a trial. Then, and I swear, this seemed like theatrical, she ripped it in half. Just stood there and tore it down the middle, as if it would nullify the judicial process. There, she said. That's finished. Now, if you want us to forgive you, pay for Maya's science camp and stop throwing this foolish tantrum. She smiled, as if she had just fixed everything. I didn't say anything because I sensed they weren't taking me seriously. Not for 1 second. Not when I was a child. Not when I became a physician. Not even now. To them, I was still the awkward, science-obsessed girl who should be grateful for scraps and keep her place. The girl they despised but never truly admired. They assumed I wouldn't follow through. But they were mistaken. So I let my mother stroll off the porch, muttering to herself like the hero of a sad play. And I closed the door quietly and calmly. But in my mind, I was already planning the next step. My mother ripped up the eviction letter in front of me, as if it were a gutter-cleaning flyer, after accusing me of being selfish, loveless, and emotionally unstable. Then she mustered the courage to grin and said, "Pay for Maya's science camp and we'll forgive you." She answered, "We will forgive you." As if they were the victims. Turning away my kid for Christmas was a failure in decorum rather than cruelty. 2 mornings later, I met with an attorney. I listed everything. The house in my name, the mortgage I had been paying for 7 years, the bills, the dental plan, and the quiet sacrifices. He did not flinch. "I assume you want a formal eviction," he replied, as if it were the weather. I nodded. The warning was sent out that same week, 60 days, paper stamped, signature obtained. And this time, they couldn't just take it up and pretend it didn't exist. I maintained paying the mortgage. I wasn't going to let my credit suffer for the sake of a statement, but everything else? Gone. Utilities. Cable. Medical reimbursement. They received a crash tutorial in what no support looks like. 2 weeks later, somebody knocked on my door. It was Aunt Laura. I thought she was a good aunt. She brought a tin of cookies and a practiced expression of worry. "Katie," she answered. "I just want to talk." I allowed her inside. I already understood why she was there. We sat in the kitchen. I poured tea. Neither of us touched it. "It just doesn't sound like you," she explained. "Throwing out your parents over a misunderstanding," she continued gently. I laughed once, not gently. I informed her about the house, the expenses, and the Christmas Eve treachery. How my parents had accommodated 28 individuals, including a neighbor and 2 cousins I hadn't spoken with in a decade, but not their own granddaughter. Aunt Laura paled. "I didn't know," she replied. "They didn't tell you," I explained. She walked away as if she couldn't stop thinking about what she had heard. 3 days later, I received an SMS that I had not previously understood. I do now. 1 week before the deadline, my lawyer called. "They haven't moved at all," he explained. "Then we proceed," I said. I listed the house the same day. Set a reasonable price, not too expensive. I wasn't aiming to maximize value. I simply wanted it to be over. A buyer made a bid quickly. Families enjoy that area. They simply wanted it empty. "Vacant possession is required," my representative reminded me. "Noted," I said. I did not go the day they were removed. The new owners handled the situation legally. I heard it was not pretty, but what happened next was not better. Rachel took them in. Of course she did. My sister used to cosplay as the better daughter. She conducted interviews with cousins as if it were a publicity tour. "She's abandoning them," she remarked. All because of one holiday mishap. 3 weeks later, she showed up at my door, her eyes bloodshot and her hair in a frizzy bun. "I can't do it," she said, not even saying hi. "They are continuously fighting. Mom believes the living room is too small. Dad claims that my children are noisy. They refuse to share the bathroom. I am going insane." I leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. "They need a rental," she explained. "You could at least assist with that. Just enough for a deposit." "No, Emma. On Christmas Eve you stood there and watched as she was sent away. That was your decision. This is mine." She blinked, then turned to walk away. A week later, she also kicked them out. They ended up in a rental that no one would recommend. 2 rooms, 1 heating, and a front step that tilted like a shrug. Their pension barely covered the rent and groceries. Gone were the trips, dinner parties, and cruise they had planned for their anniversary. They tried to elicit sympathy from the extended family. I said I had cut them off without warning, that I was unstable, that I had always been cold. But by then, I had quietly chatted with the uncles and cousins. I sent them documents of the invoices I had paid. I forwarded the eviction letter, which was time-stamped and certified. One cousin simply said, "Wow." Another person sent a thumbs-up emoji. The family didn't rush to save them, and neither was I. 2 months later, Sophie and I were sitting on the porch, sipping iced tea. No plans, no performance, just a relaxing afternoon. She remarked, "I don't miss them, you know." I didn't either. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. I opened it reflexively. "I hope you are proud of what you have accomplished." I removed it. No pause. There's no breath. "They'll probably text again," Sophie replied casually. "They always do," I explained. "But they're not my problem anymore." And they were not. They told Sophie there was no room at the table. There's no more room in our lives for cruelty, control, or manipulation. Fast forward 2 years. They're still in that dilapidated rental. Still blaming everyone except themselves. Sophie is prospering now. She's studying what she enjoys. And the proceeds from the sale of the house paid for more than simply tuition. They also provided her with peace of mind. Me? A small amount of closure. I do not answer their calls. I do not send money. I don't lose sleep. I protected my daughter. I chose her. Finally. But tell me, have I gone too far? Or just far enough? Pursued my dream as a photographer, lost my parents' support, until they learned about my 6-figure income. My parents went completely crazy when I decided to try my hand at fashion photography instead of attending college after high school. For months, we quarreled over this. Ultimately, they informed me that they would never forgive me and would stop interacting with me if I chose to go down this route rather than earning a college degree. Knowing that my connection with my parents was not my top concern at the moment, I did not let that deter me. My goal was to become a fashion photographer, and I did just that. They were furious with me and avoided talking to me for a few years. I found it really challenging, particularly because I was so young and needed assistance from other family members. Most of the assistance I required was monetary. I had only ever worked summer jobs part-time before, and the money I had saved was insufficient to support myself in a new place. I was in dire need of help because, at the time, I was an intern and didn't get paid much. Fortunately, my dad's older sister, my aunt, frequently sent me the money I needed to pay my bills. Naturally, my aunt had a soft spot for me because I had always been close to her daughter as a child. Even with her help, I occasionally still felt very alone. After I left home, my brother and dad began to act as though I didn't even exist, so I didn't have the support of my immediate family. Because it would cause friction between them, my aunt never disclosed to my father that she was providing financial support for me. Without a doubt, he would blame her for pushing me to make poor choices. In spite of this, my aunt informed me of my parents' reactions to my decision. She would always bring me up to them when she saw them, but they would usually still react negatively. It was discouraging to hear them abruptly shift the subject. Then, one year, they suddenly demanded that I spend the holidays at home so that we could get back in touch. In the end, I returned that year to try again with our relationship. They were pretty normal about the whole thing, which surprised me because I had expected an emotional reunion. My mother later informed me that they knew I wouldn't alter my mind, so they made the decision to get in touch with me. Furthermore, they didn't want to be seen as the type of parents that didn't encourage their kids' goals and aspirations because that would come across negatively. I came to see that rather than truly respecting my choice, they had only contacted me to protect their brand. Despite my disappointment, I made the decision to keep in contact with them in the hopes that they would someday reconsider their opinion of me. They have never seemed to be as proud of me as they are of my brother, even though I have told them about all of my successes over the previous few years. After earning a business degree, my brother began working with a friend of my dad's. He makes a nice living, and my parents are always boasting about how he started providing for them as soon as he started working. I did offer to assist them monetarily, so it's not that I hadn't. But because of my unusual line of work, they turned me down, saying they wouldn't feel comfortable taking my money because they weren't sure I could live comfortably without it. I was aware that this was not a sincere worry. It served as just another reminder that they didn't think I was performing well enough and would much rather rely on my brother. I was never going to be good enough for them, no matter what I did. They relied on my brother instead of believing me, even after I assured them that I was okay and could help. It wasn't like they didn't require assistance. They have been having financial difficulties for the past few years, particularly following the pandemic. About 2 years ago, my parents had to close the cafe they owned and retire early because of significant losses sustained during the pandemic. My brother began providing them with financial help at that point. It was quite offensive that they refused to assist me in spite of this. I stopped insisting on staying in contact with them after that. The only times we would see each other were at family gatherings, where I would try to be as polite as possible. Since I knew they wouldn't value me, I even stopped spending the holidays at home. Rather, they would take advantage of the occasion to criticize and ridicule my decisions. I was done with that negativity. I no longer needed it in my life. Since then, our relationship has gotten much worse, and we hardly ever communicate. Because I dislike discussing it, very few family members are aware of my feelings. My cousin, who recently got engaged, is one of the few who does. My family was invited to her engagement party a few days ago, but I was also invited. Regretfully, my illness prevented me from attending. After years of not speaking to me, my parents finally called me while I was away because of a chat my cousin had with them. I need to explain what my cousin told me before I talk to my parents about the phone call. As soon as I finished talking to my parents, I contacted my cousin to talk to her about it. She informed me that my parents had been boasting at the engagement party about my brother's big promotion at work and how he would now be making nearly twice as much as he had before. My cousin claimed that it was starting to irritate her. I'm not sure if that's accurate or if they were exaggerating. In addition to making the entire celebration about themselves, they were utterly disregarding the fact that I, their other kid, was succeeding in her life on par with, if not better than her. She was aware that, despite my best efforts to pretend otherwise, my connection with my parents clearly had an impact on me. Even though I had accomplished a lot, I felt like I could never do enough to make them proud of me. I found that to be really distressing. My cousin chose to defend me since she was aware of this. My relative mentioned how wonderful it was that they now had 2 children earning 6 figures annually as my parents were boasting about my brother. My parents, who hadn't bothered to stay in contact with me over the previous 2 years, were understandably startled. Since I didn't think it was necessary, I had never disclosed my income to them. My parents called me the following day after my cousin dropped that bombshell without providing any further details. I was taken aback when they called. They inquired as to whether I had been making 6 figures annually and whether I had been doing so for a number of years. Thinking they were finally calling to congratulate me and express their pride, I made the decision to be honest with them. They said they couldn't believe they had been forcing my brother to provide for them financially when I had been doing so well, which was really foolish and delusional of me. They had the gall to become upset rather than happy for me. They chastised me for not informing them of my earnings sooner so they could make an informed decision about which child should provide them with financial support. I couldn't speak. In retrospect, that was exactly the reaction I should have anticipated, but it was not the one I had anticipated. Let me tell you what occurred next if you think that's awful. My parents began to explain how they had put a lot of pressure on my brother when I didn't reply. They said that he had been too busy providing for them to save enough money for his own future. They maintained that I should now pay $100,000 in reparations to help even things up because I hadn't been burdened in the same manner. They rationalized it by claiming that they were also my parents and that I had to share my brother's responsibility. They made it seem as though I had been avoiding accountability, utterly disregarding the fact that they had initially turned down my assistance. After giving their request some attention, I erupted in laughter and hung up. The scenario was so ridiculous that it was the only response I could summon. I then gave my cousin a call to get the whole narrative and to double-check the information. I have been deliberately avoiding my parents ever since. After the call, I banned their number, but they began texting me from a burner phone, which I also blocked. In every one of their mails, I was accused of concealing my earnings. They said they would never have requested my brother for help and would have accepted my help instead if they had known about it sooner. Recently, I also received a text from my brother, who usually avoids similar situations. He stated that he thought our parents had a point, but he didn't want to pick sides. He acknowledged that they ought to have been more encouraging and that they had mistreated me. But he also said that I should have told them exactly how much I made rather than leaving them in the dark if I really wanted them to accept my assistance when I first offered. He maintained that they couldn't have known I was doing so well for myself because this isn't a career they understood well. He said that he had been the only one providing for our parents up until this point and that he thought it only right that I do the same. I owe it to them because they reared me, he reminded me, and whether I like it or not, they are also my parents. I'm bewildered now. I'm sorry for my brother, but I'm not sorry for my parents. Although we haven't had a fantastic relationship, it hasn't been as horrible as our relationship with our parents. He could have a point though, and I can't deny that. Is it bad of me to keep my actual income a secret from my parents? Edit. Since people are curious as to why I never told my parents how much I made, here's the answer. First of all, I dislike discussing my income. I want people to trust me when I tell them that I have enough to aid them, especially my parents. Why would I pretend that I had the money to provide for them? Second, money isn't the only metric I use to gauge my achievement. For me, success is about following my dreams and realizing them, not about how much money I make. When I first began out, I felt just as accomplished since I had followed my passion and defied the odds. In addition to being wealthy, I wanted my parents to be proud of me for being content and successful in my line of work. Finally, I never realized that in order to get their approval, I would have to be specific about my salary. I suppose I've had some delusions about them throughout my life. Eventually, I thought they would treat me the same way they treated my brother, but that never materialized. Before any of this occurred, I did discuss this with my cousin, who informed me that I shouldn't have needed to disclose my income to my parents in order for them to treat me like their child. At least someone was on my side, so it was a tremendous relief when she told me that I hadn't done anything wrong. Additionally, I am positive that my aunt shares my cousin's viewpoint. But what really irritates me is that my brother, who had previously been impartial, is suddenly opposing me. I'm open to any suggestions you may have because I haven't decided whether or not I should feel bad about it. First update. Hello, I appreciate all of your remarks. I suppose I needed that because going through them was a true eye-opener for me. Actually, I had started to think that perhaps I was mistaken, but I no longer believe that to be the case. I blocked my brother as well after realizing that, despite his initial neutrality, it had not aided me in any way. Unlike my aunt and cousin, who both defended me, he never did. In all honesty, my brother is only supporting my parents today because they have never given him a reason to oppose them, in contrast to me, who undoubtedly has a number of reasons. I responded to his message prior to blocking him. Although he didn't grow up in the same household as me, I informed him that I still respected the idea that he was making the extra effort to defend our parents. He can never really comprehend what I've gone through since the parents he knows are so different from the parents I know. His statement that I owe it to our parents to assist them, whether I like it or not, was incredibly unjust. I owe them nothing, nothing at all. Anything they did for me prior to my 18th birthday was required by law, not as a favor. I left home to pursue my aspirations as soon as I was no longer a minor. They didn't support me or even spoke to me for the next few years after that. My aunt, not my brother or my parents, had supported me during that period. My cousin provided me with emotional support the entire time. As a result, I seldom ever think of my brother or parents as family because they have never supported me. My aunt is the one person I owe the most. My brother has been providing for our parents alone for the past few years, and I don't blame him for that. It's not that I didn't offer assistance, in fact, I did, but they turned me down. I decided to cut them out of my life because of that. They also didn't appear to be in any worse shape without me. They haven't apologized to me, but now that they know how much I earn, they expect me to make it right. That's entitled and unfair, and I don't think I have to put up with it. I decided I didn't want to talk to my brother anymore after sending him that message, so I blocked him as well. Neither my brother nor my parents have messaged me since. My aunt, however, got in touch with me and informed me that my brother must have forwarded my message to my father. I had stated in the mail that my aunt had helped me out when my parents hadn't. My father went crazy over it, as we had anticipated, and started blaming my aunt for misguiding me. He thinks I wouldn't have deviated so much from my parents if my aunt had never encouraged me and had instead advised me to return to them and follow their rules. He maintains that we would have a far better connection now if it had occurred. To be honest, I have no idea why someone would think this. In all honesty, I would have found another means to follow my aspirations even if my aunt hadn't assisted me. I would not have abandoned them. I wouldn't be earning as much money or enjoying my career as much if I hadn't been able to pursue a career in photography. Rather, I would be angry at my parents for preventing me from pursuing my own interests. How would our relationship be enhanced by that? It would have significantly worsened the situation. My aunt is currently being used as a scapegoat, which seems to be all they need. They have been accusing her of being a bad sister in their constant messages. They say that instead of supporting me, She would have persuaded me to return to my parents if she had been a decent sister. My present bad behavior, which they say has always been praised, is attributed to her. They have even implicated my cousin in this, claiming that it is not surprising that she has become impolite and uncultured. They contend that because my cousin called them out at her engagement party, this illustrates my aunt's incapacity to raise children appropriately. My parents are essentially acting irrationally. My aunt is certain that they won't let this go, despite the fact that she has barred them. They are intent on making a big deal out of it and playing the victim in a predicament they started. I truly don't know what else I can say to my brother if he still believes that supporting our parents is appropriate in light of everything that has happened. I suppose I should have anticipated it. Perhaps this isn't unexpected because, although he never mistreated me, he also never defended me. Second update. Hello, I haven't posted anything for the past 2 weeks. My parents made the decision to make this drama public for some reason. They have posted a number of posts disparaging my aunt and myself in the last several days, and I honestly have no idea what they are trying to accomplish. They have been promoting a biased narrative in these posts. They say that despite the fact that photography is an unsteady career, my aunt pushed me to pursue it against their wishes. They also claim that I rejected their attempts to patch things up with me. They claim that when they recently requested financial assistance from me, I ostensibly offered but minimized my income. As a result, they had to rely on my brother, which has had an impact on his financial security. I'm still refusing to assist and placing all the weight on my brother, even though they're acting as though they just recently found out the whole truth about my financial status. A large portion of their story is false, and it is entirely biased. I don't want to interact with them on social media, and neither does my aunt. We've been attempting to get in touch with them privately to request that they remove the posts. I even warned them that if they didn't comply, I would get legal help. But, because no one is going to waste their money on a lawyer for something like this, I suppose my parents can see I'm bluffing. This is a minor nuisance, but it's not like it's having a significant impact on me. Many people, including those I haven't spoken to in years, have contacted me to inquire about the issue. The way they are handling this as a show bothers me a lot. I want my parents to remove their posts because I may have to share my side of the story with my aunt if they don't. Asking them to remove the posts hasn't worked at all thus far, but neither of us wants to do that. We might eventually have to publicly present our case. We should go ahead, according to my relative, but I'm sick of anticipating all the drama that will ensue. In any case, we must take the necessary action. Third update. My last post was 2 days ago, and as I previously stated, we were at a loss on what to do. In the end, my aunt and I posted the truth, not just our version of events. In order to dispel my parents' biased story, we wanted to correct the record. My parents haven't made any public remarks about it yet, but many people have left encouraging remarks. The rest of the family hasn't been as ignorant as I initially believed, it turns out. Many of them have observed throughout the years how my parents have been more publicly proud of my brother and have always treated him better than I have. Getting all of this support makes me very happy. At least I now know that, in my heart, they supported me, even though they had never previously spoken out about it. That is reassuring. But when my brother sent me an email, his reply wasn't encouraging. I was advised that what I was doing was seriously messed up. He claimed that he had been attempting to manage the problem with our parents and had nearly persuaded them to remove their posts. However, they are now refusing to do so because I posted my side. He claimed that I wasn't the kind of person who would add fuel to the fire and stir up more controversy. He's correct. I didn't want to make things worse, but I had no other option. My brother has treated me unfairly, in my opinion. This was started by our parents, not by me. I only spoke the truth to avoid needless hatred toward my aunt and me. It's possible that my parents should have considered the repercussions before making such a fuss. I don't think I have anything further to say to my brother at this time. It is obvious that he has chosen a side, and it is not mine. In any case, I had no desire to communicate with my parents. I don't mind at all if they all want to completely cut me out of their life. Fourth update. Hi everyone, my last update was quite a few months ago. I recently returned home to attend the wedding of my cousin. As her maid of honor, I performed all of my responsibilities for her for about a month before the wedding. She informed me that neither my brother nor my parents had received an invitation. They shouldn't have been surprised by this because it was obvious that neither my aunt nor my cousin wanted anything to do with them following the events of a few months earlier. I don't see why my parents thought they would be invited, when they hadn't even tried to apologize to any of us following the incident. They were not just disappointed that they hadn't received an invitation, but they had also expected one. They even came to shout at my aunt when she was at her residence. My father was incensed and informed her that she couldn't abandon him for such a little matter. Coming from a dad who essentially pulled his daughter out of his life, that is rather ironic. My aunt quickly put him in his place after putting up with his antics. After a heated argument that day, my parents are now ranting about us to anyone who would listen. I don't think anyone is taking them seriously, though, as it looks like the most of them are just looking to gossip. My brother has not gotten back to me. Although it is unfortunate, he has made the decision to support our parents. Everything went off without a hitch, and the wedding was stunning. The icing on the cake was that I also got to spend a lot of time with my aunt and cousin. I've returned to work after a much-needed vacation. Knowing that my parents haven't altered at all in all these months is comforting. My sister accused my husband of an affair, and my parents believed her. 2 years later, her fiancé exposed her lies and cheating. My sister told my parents that my husband had an affair with her, and they believed her. 2 years later, her fiancé discovered she was cheating and that she had made up the entire narrative. It's difficult to know where to begin, but I feel compelled to get this off my chest and, maybe, find some clarity. I apologize if this comes across as rambling. There is so much to unpack. Hopefully, you people can point me in the correct way because I'm at a loss. I am 30 years old and have been married to the love of my life, Jake, 34, for 8 beautiful years. We have 2 lovely children, a 6-year-old girl and a 4-year-old son. Life was very close to perfect. We had a comfortable home, a consistent schedule, and a profound bond that I believed was unbreakable. Our days were filled with the normal ups and downs of family life, but I couldn't have been happier. But everything changed 2 years ago, thanks to my older sister Lily. Lily, who is also 34, began on a similar route to mine, but our lives have taken completely different twists. To put it mildly, her relationship history has been fraught with difficulties. She had been alone for a long time, and there was a very good reason for it. As much as it pains me to admit it, Lily is a bit of a red flag in terms of relationships. Her actions can only be described as those of a neurotic narcissist. She has a history of destroying her relationships, frequently driving people away with her unstable and deceptive behavior. Lily's relationships always seem to start out well, but they never last. She has a habit of becoming very intense too quickly, and then things begin to unravel. I've seen it happen several times. She'll meet someone, they'll begin dating, and then she'll start picking fights over little matters or become so possessive that the guy feels suffocated. Soon enough, it's over, and she's left wondering why she can't find someone who will remain around. It's difficult to witness, especially since Lily frequently takes her emotions out on me. She would come over to my apartment and complain about not being able to find a man like Jake. There was clearly a great deal of resentment. She'd say things like, "You've found a man? Why can't I find somebody like Jake?" I tried not to take offense since I knew she was in a horrible place, but it was difficult not to feel like her words were aimed at me. Despite everything, I still love my sister. I'd always hoped she'd find the man of her dreams and be happy. I even tried to set her up with Jake's friend once, thinking they'd make a wonderful match. But Lily's unusual and unsettling actions rapidly put a stop to that notion. She was so severe and dominating that I recognized it wasn't worth jeopardizing our friendship for her. Despite all of this, I remained hopeful that Lily would finally find happiness. Unfortunately, it was evident that Lily did not feel the same way about me. Jake and I had a big family cookout at our parents' house 2 years ago to celebrate our 6th wedding anniversary. It had been a while since the entire family had gotten together, so everyone was having a great time. Our children were playing with their relatives, and the air was full of laughter and happiness. It was one of those rare moments when everything seemed perfect, and I was surrounded by the people I cared about the most. As the evening progressed, Lily took me aside. At first, I assumed she was going to make me a heartfelt anniversary wish. She complimented me, and I thanked her, shocked at her genuine tone. I asked her what she'd been up to lately, and because I knew she had a new boyfriend, I also questioned about that. But instead of the pleasant conversation I expected, Lily's tone shifted. She gazed at me with peculiar intensity, and the next words she said caught me completely off guard. She stated that after Jake and I married, they secretly had an affair for a period. At first, I thought it was a weird joke and chuckled, but Lily was dead serious. She claimed that after the wedding, Jake continued texting her, and what began as benign, getting-to-know-you exchanges quickly evolved into intense emotional conversations. According to Lily, Jake told her that he and I were constantly fighting and bickering about minor issues. She claimed he'd ask if they might meet, which is when the affair allegedly began. Her statements made me feel ill. I couldn't believe Jake, who had always been committed to me and our family, would be unfaithful. Lily explained that she had kept this a secret all along but could no longer pretend. The way she delivered it, so quietly and confidently, shook me to my core more than the actual news. I briefly considered all of the possible options. Did Jake actually cheat on me? And with my own sister? Were we supposed to be separated now? How about the kids? It took me a while to process my ideas, but then I asked Lily if she had any proof that Jake couldn't get away with lying. That is where she faltered. Lily said she had a lot of evidence, but as her sister, I should believe her, with or without it. That's when I realized, Lily was lying. She could trick Mom and Dad, but I had been watching her for years. I could immediately detect when she was lying. She burst into tears when she realized I could be onto her. Then came her lecture, which included comments like, "I cannot believe you don't trust me," and "I told you for your own good." Lily then went on to tell our parents the same tale. Soon, all of our friends and family surrounded us, and Lily began shouting at Jake about how he had cheated on me with her. She even alleged that, despite her refusal to participate, he blackmailed her. My hubby was just as perplexed as I was. At first, he assumed this was an unfunny joke. However, when Lily began screaming like crazy in front of everyone, the situation became quite serious. I hoped my folks would assist me with damage control. After all, even if Lily's narrative were accurate, I would have been crushed. To my amazement, my parents sided with Lily without regard for our circumstances. Dad screamed at Jake, accusing him of playing with Lily's feelings. I felt abandoned. My own sister confessed to me that she had an affair with my husband of 6 years. Even though I knew that wasn't true, no wife enjoys hearing this type of thing. Furthermore, if her narrative was true, my father was more concerned with Lily's feelings than my own, a wife and mother who would have lost her husband. When we got home that day, Jake and I talked about everything. I trusted my husband and knew he would never betray me. Before you think I'm gullible, let me warn you that Lily has a history of lying. She has previously wrecked countless relationships with petty lies. In truth, Jake's pal ended their relationship because she accused him of cheating on her at random. She would set her own belongings throughout the apartment and then ask him about if he had brought any other girls. This would lead to screaming bouts, and when he was fatigued, Mom would tell him it was just a test. The situation with us simply confirmed this was a trend for Lily, so I chose to believe my husband. The next days were the worst of my life. My parents refused to hear our side of the tale, preferring to trust Lily's version without any evidence. Our previously close-knit family was broken. Jake and I found ourselves alone, and the atmosphere at family gatherings grew unpleasant. My parents treated me with distrust, while Jake was completely ignored. Lily, on the other hand, appeared to delight in the turmoil she had caused. She played the victim, taking up the attention and pity of everyone around her. It was as if she relished witnessing the devastation she had inflicted in my life. The more I attempted to defend myself and Jake, the more she distorted the story to portray us as monsters. I attempted to contact my parents to explain that there was no proof of Lily's assertions, but it was ineffective. They'd made up their minds, and their commitment to Lily was solid. Mom even accused me of being in denial and choosing Jake above my own sister, which shattered my heart. I couldn't comprehend how they could so easily abandon me, how they could blindly believe Lily's falsehoods. Eventually, the tension reached its breaking point. Jake and I made the difficult decision to detach ourselves from my family for our own mental health and the sake of our children's well-being. It was a difficult decision, but we couldn't keep living in the shadow of such a painful falsehood. This eventually became our new normal. As I mentioned, it was difficult but not impossible. I recognized that I didn't need my parents' approval for everything in my life, and if they wanted to believe Lily's lie, then so be it. But just when I thought the drama was over, something happened to shake things up again. I came across a post on Facebook unexpectedly, and guess what? Lily became engaged. She had shared a series of photos with her new fiancé, a man named Mark, along with a lengthy, heartfelt caption about how she had met the love of her life. She told how Mark entered her life at what she believed was the most difficult time she had ever experienced, a time of pain and betrayal. Ironic, eh? Reading those sentences caused my stomach to churn. The hypocrisy was staggering. Lily had portrayed herself as a victim, employing the same lies she had spoken to elicit compassion and admiration from our extended family and friends. As I browsed through the comments, I noticed that many of our family, who had largely supported her during the turmoil, were praising her and extending their support. Some even made snide, passive-aggressive statements addressed directly at me, such as, "Good for you for getting past that toxicity. You do not need that in your life." It was infuriating. These folks had no idea what had transpired, yet they were ready to congratulate Lily on her alleged courage and tenacity. I felt a similar sensation of betrayal, not only from Lily, but from the entire family. which had decided to believe her falsehoods without questioning. It felt as if they had entirely eliminated me from their life, while continuing to support someone who had only caused grief and destruction. What concerned me even more was Lily's engagement to a man who had no notion what kind of person she was. I couldn't help but feel sad for Mark, knowing that he was being deceived by the same lies that had destroyed my family. I wondered whether Lily had ever told him the truth about what she had done, or if she had continued to weave her web of deception to trap him as well. I was tempted to reach out to Mark and warn him about Lily's true personality. But I immediately realized that it was not my place to meddle with their relationship. Mark would have to discover the truth on his own, just like I did. Still, I couldn't ignore the sense of dread that came with knowing Lily was once again manipulating those around her for her personal gain. In the days that followed, I tried to get the news of Lily's engagement out of my mind, but it was difficult. Suddenly, I began to notice a series of missed calls from an unknown number. I ignored it at first because I assumed it was spam. But the calls kept coming. I didn't have time to pick up because I was so busy with work and kids. Finally, during a break at work, I decided to respond. On the other end of the line, I was welcomed by a screaming Lily. She hurled every insult and slur she could think of at me. It was like a torrent of rage, unfiltered and untamed. I tried to ask her what was going on, but she refused to let me speak. After what seemed like an eternity of listening to her rant, I was finally able to convince her to pause long enough to explain what had happened and why she was so angry. There was a little hush on the other end before she screamed, "How could you claim to be innocent after what you've done?" Before I could react, she hung up. I was left in a trance, trying to make sense of what had just occurred. My mind was spinning with options, but none made sense. What could I have done to make Lily so angry? I had stayed out of her life, given her the privacy she clearly desired, and done nothing to provoke her. I could only think of one person who might have some insight into this situation: my Uncle Tom. He was one of the few family members I still communicated with, and he was always a voice of reason in the midst of the insanity. I called him, thinking he could shed some light on the situation. Uncle Tom did not disappoint. When I recounted what had transpired, he revealed what Lily had cleverly left out. Apparently, her fiancé, Mark, had called off the engagement. What's the reason? He had discovered the alleged affair between Lily and Jake through family rumors. Mark, being the wonderful guy he was, had been looking into a disagreement he had spotted between Lily and myself. When Mark found out about the affair, he was naturally outraged. The trouble was that he didn't realize it was all a lie, a fiction Lily cooked up to seek attention and sympathy. Things took an even more dramatic turn just before the engagement was called off. Mark, Lily's fiancé, had sensed that something was wrong with their relationship. Lily's unpredictable conduct had caused some concerns for him, and he couldn't escape the suspicion that there was more to the story. Mark, motivated by his suspicions, decided to check Lily's phone. What he discovered shocked everyone: Lily had been cheating on him. She'd been meeting up with a guy she met on a dating app, and their interactions weren't simply casual chatter. Mark, who was wealthy and seemed ideal in Lily's eyes, was someone she refused to lose. Lily had no choice but to come honest. She admitted to Mark that she had no affair with Jake and that the entire thing was made up. But, rather than saving her relationship, her confession backfired. She did not deny having discussions with the guy on the dating app. Mark was horrified, not only by the affair, but also by the deception and the lengths Lily had gone to in order to carry it out. It presented Lily in an even more negative light, and Mark wanted nothing to do with her after that. After Mark called off the engagement, Lily's life began to disintegrate. Her lies were now public knowledge, and those who had previously backed her began to distance themselves. The folks who had previously believed her story about Jake and me now questioned everything. Their caustic remarks and supportive letters faded when they discovered the extent of Lily's deception. My parents, who had so easily chosen her side 2 years ago, were left stunned by the truth. Despite the remorse and sorrow I feel for my sister, I know that the best thing for my family right now is to stay away from all of this toxic drama. We've gone through enough, and now I need to focus on protecting my husband, children, and myself from future danger. I'm happy for the clarity that has resulted from all of this, even if it has been extremely hard to achieve. I'd also like to thank everyone who read my article and offered their support and suggestions. It's been a challenging trip, but strangers' compassion and understanding have helped make it bearable. I am grateful to you all for allowing me to see things more clearly and giving me the courage to do what is best for my family. Update 2. Hello, everyone. The last week has been quite stressful, so my family and I decided to take a much-needed mini vacation. It was a nice opportunity for us to clear our heads and refocus on each other after what had happened. I also spent some time reading over all of your comments on my prior postings, and I just wanted to say thank you. Your insights and encouragement have really improved my understanding of the situation. One thing that really struck me was the number of comments about Lily's weird fixation with my husband Jake. Now that you've brought it to my attention, I see that there were always warning flags, but I just didn't notice them at the time. When Jake and I first started dating, Lily had a lot to say. More than I expected. She would always call him brilliant and dashing, which looked like innocent praise, but they were frequently followed by comments that now seem strange, such as how I got him or how he was so out of my league. I dismissed it as her typical mocking, but thinking back, there could have been more to it. Anyway, going on, I must say that my parents have not ceased attempting to reach us. They've called and texted us hundreds of times, and while I'm still unhappy about what happened, I've decided to allow them to come visit us. I understand that their primary motivation is to visit the children, and I have accepted that. After all, I've decided that I would not deprive my children of their grandparents, even if I am not ready to fully reconcile with them myself. While my parents may not have been the best at supporting me, they have always been loving grandparents, and my children adore them. The visit will be difficult, and I'm still unsure how I'll react to seeing them face to face after everything that has transpired, but I'm prepared to try for the sake of my children. I will create limits and preserve my own mental health, but I cannot ignore the attachment they have with their grandparents. Hopefully, this visit will provide some clarity on how to go from here. Thank you again for all of your help and suggestions. I'll keep you posted on how things progress. Update 3. Hello everyone, I hope you are doing better. I wanted to provide an update on how things have been since my last post. My parents did come to visit us, and while I was concerned about how it would go, I have to admit it went better than I imagined. Things were awkward at first, as I expected, but my children immediately broke the ice. They were overjoyed to see their grandparents again, and their enthusiasm helped to alleviate the tension in the room. It was evident that they missed them as much as my parents did. As we settled in, the kids innocently asked where Aunt Lily was. It was a question I expected to come up at some point, and it elicited an uncomfortable stillness. We all avoided the subject at the moment, attempting to keep the atmosphere light. Later, while the kids were busy, I decided to ask my parents directly where she was. They informed me Lily had returned to their home after a long absence and wanted to apologize to me. I found it difficult to take it seriously, however. After everything she'd done, an apology seemed pointless. Furthermore, Mark, her ex-fiancé, deserved the most sincere apologies after everything she had put him through. I advised that instead of wasting time apologizing, they consider enrolling her in treatment. The way she acted, lying so brazenly and destructively, was not a simple mistake. She acted like a habitual liar, and at times, it appeared she was on the verge of being labeled a psychopath. Some may even claim she is one. If she is to heal from this condition, she must seek expert help. Interestingly, Jake and Mark have developed an unexpected bond throughout this process. They began hanging together and learned that they had many common interests. Jake keeps Mark informed about what's going on with us, and it's been great to see them both support each other in various ways. Mark, being the mature individual that he is, has begun to move on with his life. He did not deserve what he went through, but as humans, all we can do is move on and attempt to find peace. Overall, I believe we are on the route to a resolution. Things will never be the same, but I am hopeful that they can improve. If the world works in our favor, we may not be able to return to the way things were, but we may be able to reach a satisfactory point, one in which we can re-establish some trust and move forward without the weight of the past holding us back. We've learned the value of open communication, the perils of leaping to conclusions, and the strength of forgiveness, both giving and receiving it. While we are not completely recovered yet, we believe we are on the right track. Thank you again, Reddit, for your encouragement and guidance at this difficult time. Your opinions have been important in guiding us through this challenging circumstance. We'll continue to take things one day at a time, focusing on our mental health and our children's well-being as we move forward. My parents favored my twin sister. So much that they spent my wedding budget on her, so I cut them off after refusing my mother's selfish request. I, 23F, have a twin sister named Allison with whom I am not on good terms. I'm not even on speaking terms with her or my parents. Despite how I've been treated in the past, we used to be on good terms, but I've kept my distance for the last 2 years. They hadn't bothered to contact me either, until recently. Allison is 12 minutes older than me and is therefore the golden kid by default. My parents only wanted one child because that was what they had planned for, and they didn't have the resources to support two. By the time they discovered it was twins, it was too late, and my mother did not want to take any chances. In high school, I learned about this from my intoxicated uncle at a Thanksgiving celebration. That was pretty much the day I gave up trying to win my folks over. They did what seemed most natural in those circumstances. They had 2 children but chose to adore only one. That was Allison, not me. Allison and I had an incredible sibling rivalry from childhood. To impress our parents, I would try to outdo all she could do. But the more I achieved, the more they appeared to despise me for outperforming their golden child. To be honest, Allison had no interest in competing with me. She was only looking for validation. She claimed to be concerned about the rivalry, but her main skill was manipulation. She was brilliant at convincing people that she was offended when I outdid her. This resulted in many, including our parents, relatives, and even some classmates, supporting her feelings while tearing me down to help her feel better. Finally, the competition provided me with good grades and several extracurricular accomplishments to demonstrate my superiority. Meanwhile, Allison captured my parents' attention, affirmation, and sympathy. I was always cast as the villain, making her feel inadequate. Looking back, I don't think I'd swap what I've achieved, but I wish I had rubbed my success in her face more at the time. 2 years ago, we turned 21. By then, we'd both graduated. Allison from a conventional college and me from one of the state's best business schools. I was the valedictorian and received a scholarship, so my parents saved a lot of money on my education. Call me crazy, but I honestly believed my parents would be proud of me. They were not. Instead, they concentrated solely on Allison and her troubles. Allison had barely made ends meet and was looking for work, only to be turned down again. I, on the other hand, was already working from home as an intern for a corporation. Despite my accomplishments, my parents did not bother to congratulate me. Instead, they were absorbed with concern for Allison's future. I was not surprised, but rather disappointed. I was still living with my parents and hadn't saved enough money to move out, so I chose to keep my feelings to myself. But after our 21st birthday, I couldn't anymore. I expected them to accomplish something significant for us. However, the day before our birthday, I learned that everyone had left me at home alone. All they left me was a note saying they were going to the beach with Allison and her friends and would be back in a few days. I vividly recall being completely devastated when I read that note. They had taken Allison and her pals on a beach trip, but all I received was a happy birthday card and a $50 gift card. Many aspects of my childhood had been unfair, but here was where I drew the line. It was so disheartening and callous that I decided to leave that day and never look back. I had a few friends who were ready to let me stay with them until I could find and afford my own place. It wouldn't take long because the firm where I was interning was likely to recruit me full-time once the internship concluded. I only needed a place to reside for 2 months at the most. I packed my belongings and moved in with a friend without informing my parents or sister, and I have not looked back since. They didn't miss me enough to want me to come back. They did phone me on my birthday, the day after I moved out, but not to wish me. They said they'd be returning shortly and recommended I hire a plumber to fix the tap. I informed them that I was no longer living at home and had moved out, hoping that this information would elicit a response from them. But no such luck. My folks seemed fine with it, and Allison didn't mind. That was it. That was my final proper conversation with my family. Since then, I haven't seen them or heard from them again. My friends occasionally told me about Allison, which kept me up to date on her life, but that was about it. They knew nothing about my parents, and my parents knew nothing about me. I've worked hard for the past 2 years and finally got my own place. It's hardly a mansion, but it's a lovely apartment in a desirable neighborhood. The rent is reasonable for my wage, which is fantastic because most people my age haven't been able to accomplish this as quickly. I'm pleased with how my life has turned out, and I've done my best to keep my family out of my thoughts. Allison recently married a businessman nearly 10 years older than her and is now living it out in California. I thought everything was fine in my family until 2 days ago, when I received a call from my uncle. He told me I needed to come visit my parents right away because they had been in a terrible car accident and wanted to see me. I went to the hospital as soon as possible since, of course, I'm not so heartless. When I arrived, I discovered that they had already been in the hospital for a few days and were recovering from their injuries. A truck had hit their car. They had survived, but with significant injuries. They didn't have health insurance because my father had always believed that if we looked after ourselves, we wouldn't need to go to the hospital. This was by far one of the most ridiculous opinions I've ever heard. My parents immediately phoned my sister, but she informed them that she would not return or assist them. Apparently, it was tacky of our parents to seek financial assistance from her wealthy husband so soon after their marriage. She did not want her spouse to think she was a gold digger. She also didn't want to travel back since she couldn't leave her home and 2 children, who weren't even her own. They were her husband's children from a previous marriage, but she was too preoccupied with playing happy family with her husband's family to see her own parents in the hospital following a tragic automobile accident. She couldn't have helped, even if she had wanted to. Without her husband's assistance, she would not have been able to purchase even the flight tickets back home. After all, she's now a stay-at-home parent, caring for children who aren't her own. So much for being the favorite daughter and golden child. I couldn't believe they didn't even call me first. It became even more irritating when my uncle informed me that my parents now expected me to finance their medical expenditures. It's a large sum of money, and if I agreed, I'd have a difficult time recovering financially. I don't want to spend so much money, especially on people who have never cared about me or shown me love throughout my life. I know they have other family members that can care for them. Even if I don't pay, somebody else will. However, my parents appear to be more worried with the shame of begging others for money. They warned me that borrowing money from others would be more humiliating than borrowing from me because they'd have to repay it sooner than I would. That is what they said when they asked me to pay their debts. They even assured that I would receive my money back quickly. I do not know what to do. I'm in a bad situation. I can either disgrace my parents by refusing to pay their medical bills and focusing on myself, or I may pay for them, lose my money, and then wait indefinitely for them to repay it. To be completely honest, I don't want to help them at all. We haven't spoken in 2 years, and I've had a horrible relationship with my family for as long as I can remember. They're like strangers to me now, so I don't feel inclined to assist them. But if I don't help, am I no better than Allison? That would be difficult to accept. Is it wrong of me not to want to help my parents pay their hospital costs after such a tragic accident? Update number 1. Hello there, I've decided not to aid my parents. It was a difficult decision to make, but I was confident that their bills would be handled by someone else. They have nothing to worry about. They just contacted me because they didn't want to ask their other relatives. They were overly egoistic. I haven't told them about my decision yet. How do you tell your family that you're not going to help your parents pay for their medical bills after such a tragic accident? It's been nearly 5 days since I met them. After reading the comments, I realized I was still subconsciously competing with Allison. Because she didn't help our parents, I felt compelled to step up and prove that I was the better daughter, or whatever. I guess I'll never be able to get rid of that competitive streak, no matter how hard I try. It's simply who I am now. The majority of the comments criticized my parents' lack of health insurance, and I agree. It was quite silly of my father to discourage it. If I had been a part of their lives, I would have ensured they were insured. He didn't even have his automobile insured since he believed he was such a good driver. They're happy the collision was caused by the truck driver, since else they'd have had to pay for the auto repairs themselves. As for my parents' financial position, which many of you have inquired about, I would say they are fine. They are neither rich nor poor. My father is the head of sales at his company, while my mother works in human resources at a smaller firm. Their combined salary is sufficient to allow them to live well, especially since they are no longer responsible for supporting me or Allison. Allison and I did not have to worry about money growing up, but we also couldn't afford to live extravagantly. We were middle class, and my parents still are. I don't see why they can't pay their own medical bills. If they can borrow money and promise to repay it eventually, they will undoubtedly be able to pay their own debts. They haven't provided me a clear explanation for why they can't, and I doubt I will ever find out. Update number 2. I told my parents that I would not fund their bills. They had been contacting me for the previous week, and yesterday I knew I couldn't just ignore them and wait till they were released from the hospital. So I answered their calls and told them I'd thought about it and didn't feel compelled to help. As expected, they did not take it well. My mother tore into me, shrieking as loudly as she could with her broken ribs. She called me ungrateful and used the usual slurs. My father, on the other hand, just told me that I was no longer his daughter and hung up once my mother had finished yelling. It didn't hurt like I expected. Honestly, it had been a long time since I felt like their daughter. I can't recall when I last felt loved by my parents. They hadn't spoken to me in 2 years, on purpose, because I moved out after they snubbed me on a significant birthday. In many ways, I had never truly had parents. I'm just going to keep living my life as I have for the last 2 years, and maybe even before that. This decision has little impact on me, despite my parents' expectations. Unfortunately, after my talk with my parents, my uncle called to give me another earful. I hung up after a few seconds because I didn't want this from him either. They can think anything they want about me. It doesn't matter anymore. Later, my uncle texted me to let me know that my parents might still ask other family members for money. He also indicated that my parents had decided to use the wedding fund they had put up for me and Allison. They had already spent more than half of it on Allison's wedding, and what remained was squandered on a trip to Europe. That's why they had almost little savings left and couldn't meet their medical bills. So, the riddle is solved. Of course, my uncle told me all of this to make me feel terrible, but all I felt was relief that I hadn't wasted my hard-earned money on their expenses. They had carelessly wasted their own cash, which was not my fault. It was not my responsibility that they did not have insurance owing to their erroneous ideas. They could beg money from family or go to hell, but I was not going to give them anything. They were no longer entitled to anything from me, including my time and money. Update number 3. Hey, something pretty strange happened today, and I need to get it off my chest. I haven't been able to inform my friends about what has been going on, because most of the people I know have only known me for a short time. I don't think I want to share anything about my family history with these people, so Reddit is all I have. It's been about 2 weeks since I last spoke with my folks. Allison showed up at my apartment a few hours ago, around the evening. Her unexpected visit astonished me, first and foremost because I did not expect her to know where I lived. Apparently, one of our high school friends told her about the neighborhood where I lived, and she asked around to find out exactly where I was. That is a lot of effort for her to do simply to meet me, of all people. She looked and acted far differently than I remembered. She's gotten more polished and sophisticated, which is a significant change from the way she used to speak in high school. Now she sounds more ladylike and behaves better. Her fashion sense has evolved, as has her jewelry, and her makeup appears more sophisticated. It felt as if I wasn't even speaking to Allison. But one thing has not changed: who she is as a person. I guess you can't put cosmetics on your heart and instruct people to name it Mrs. Davis, as she did to herself. Her personality and ideas have undoubtedly not changed. She knocked on my door, and I let her in. I was startled to see her, but also interested as to why she had stopped by. I decided to hear her out. After some small conversation about her life, in which she unpromptedly told me everything she'd been up to and boasted about how wonderful her life was as a stay-at-home mom of 2 toddlers married to a wealthy man, I politely nodded through her presentation. She talked about how she had nothing to worry about but her cuticles and even began urging me to do the same, telling me how underappreciated being a traditional housewife was. I couldn't wait for her to stop chatting about extraneous topics and get to the issue. Finally, after roughly 15 minutes of talking about her life, she explained why she was here. Apparently, she had returned to see our parents since they had begged her to do so following the accident. They did not want her money. They simply wanted her to be there for them. After 2 weeks, she decided to return, and while she was here, she thought she'd pay me a visit so we could finally bury the hatchet. Thus far, so good. But then she began complaining. She claimed our parents were too needy and disrespectful of her new family. She went on and on about how she had to leave her 2 babies with their nanny merely to visit them. She stated she loathed our parents for forcing her to choose between them and her children. I can never understand why she keeps referring to them as her children when they are clearly not hers. They are her husband's children from his previous marriage. Even though I hadn't asked, she proceeded to tell me a lot about her marriage and spouse. According to what I gathered, Allison's husband most likely married her solely to boost his chances of obtaining at least partial custody of his children, which he accomplished. But she believed he loved her or something. He had been in a custody fight for a long time, and as a full-time businessman, he didn't have enough time for his children. His ex-wife was using this against him. Then he claimed that he was engaged and planned to marry as soon as the divorce was finalized, which tipped the scales in his favor. Allison told me all of this while gloating about how she saved those children. To me, it sounded like her husband had cheated her. They hadn't known each other for more than a year when he asked her to marry him, so it was obvious he wasn't in love with her. Nobody falls in love that easily, especially after a divorce. But Allison appeared blissfully unaware, or perhaps she knew he didn't love her but was ready to overlook it due to his large money balance. She seemed content being a glorified nanny to her husband's children. On top of that, she was upset with our parents for wanting her at their side after they had been in a tragic tragedy. She somehow believed that being there for them was detracting from her time with her new family, which comprised a husband who most likely did not love her and 2 children who were not biologically connected to her. These children appeared to be doing well with their nanny, just as they were with her. If ungrateful had a face, Allison would be it. I am not a fan of my parents, but when she mentioned how needy they were, I couldn't believe this was the lady they had repeatedly chosen over me. She eventually got to the point of her visit and informed me that she was departing in 2 days. She had promised Mom and Dad that she would remain for at least a month, but now she stated she was tired of hearing them talk about the tragedy and how it was the worst experience of their lives, for the 10th time. She stated she needed to return home soon. What is her solution? She asked me to reconcile with our parents and take her place. She did not want to feel terrible about leaving them when they needed her. She had no idea they had cut me off again because I refused to help with their bills, most likely because they don't talk about or think about me, so they didn't tell Allison. She came here for sympathy. She wanted me to feel sorry for her for having to deal with our parents and abandoning her family. She intended to use her pity to persuade me to step into her shoes and provide emotional support for our parents because she did not feel up to the role. It was typical Allison manipulation, but I'd known her techniques for too long to fall for them. I had no intention of telling her how I truly felt while she was in my home because it would undoubtedly lead to a fight. So I promised her I'd try, but I know I won't. She went after telling me to keep in touch, which we both knew she didn't mean. Honestly, I was relieved to see her leave. Not only is she a nasty and narcissistic person, but she is also really boring to talk to. I could barely say anything while she went on about her dull existence in California. Her life revolves primarily around parties, stepchildren, and her husband. She believes she is living a dream, but I found it depressing. Her husband clearly does not love her, and her children already spend half of their time with their mother. Of course, they'll grow up to prefer their biological mother over Allison, and they probably already do, based on what I've heard. But it's fine since she chose that life for herself. The life I chose for myself will be far away from my family, who are undeserving of even a quarter of my care or pity. If anything, today taught me that I was correct to distance myself from my parents and sister. I do not want to be a part of these people's lives. They're really selfish and vicious, and I doubt they're capable of thinking about anyone other than themselves, particularly Allison. I'm ashamed to be linked to such folks. At least now, I've been able to permanently cut links with all of them. It is unlikely that they will be able to contact me anytime soon. I blocked Allison as soon as she departed, and I've previously barred my parents and other relatives for a few days. I believe I am secure from being disturbed by my relatives in the near future. I'll pray that they don't try to contact me again after this, because I'm much better off without them. My parents gave me some money and kicked me out after my sister was born. 17 years later, they want my help. I am 35 years old and employed as a software developer at a large West Coast tech company. I finally established a secure existence for myself after working in the field for almost 10 years, complete with a respectable salary, a cozy apartment, and even some future investments. I undoubtedly appear to be living the American dream from the outside. However, something that happened recently has been making me face my history, and I'm finding it difficult to deal with. After 17 years of total quiet, my parents, 60 million and 58 million, reached out to me and asked for my assistance with my sister, 13 million. You must be aware of our past in order to comprehend the significance of this. My parents never wanted me as a youngster. Before I was born, they had been trying for a daughter for years, and they were openly disappointed to have me instead. As a child, I frequently heard parents call me the spare, or a remnant in conversations with friends or family. We weren't impoverished because my dad was a real estate agent and my mom taught high school, but they always pretended that my presence was depleting their finances. I can still clearly recall family get-togethers where family members would try to persuade my parents to be thankful for their healthy son. I learned to keep quiet during these conversations, but my parents would still say things like, "Unless it's a girl, we don't really have a child yet." My aunt would say things like, "At least he's smart and well-behaved," or, "Many couples can't have children at all." Their remarks still had a profound impact, especially during family gatherings or holidays. I began to develop a strong interest in computers and programming in middle school. Using whatever resources I could find online, I would spend hours training myself to code in the school computer lab. After noticing my enthusiasm, my computer science teacher began to mentor me and even allowed me to stay after school to work on projects. However, my parents would either nod absently or shift the conversation to their ongoing efforts to have another child whenever I tried to discuss my accomplishments with them. When I was 15, everything changed. My sister was my parents' miracle child, finally born after years of trying. It was like a switch flipping in our home when she was born. There was love, excitement, and celebration all at once, but none of it was aimed at me. They gave her everything, including their time, money, love, and attention. Although I recognized that she was their top priority, the disparity in their treatment of us was unpleasant and striking. I can still clearly recall my junior year victory in a state-level programming competition. A minor college scholarship was part of the award. My parents were so enamored with my sister's block stacking that they hardly looked up when I brought the trophy and certificate home. However, her accomplishment of stacking 3 blocks on top of one another was worthy of a cake and photo celebration with the family. I pushed myself into my academics and coding at school because I knew that education was the key to my freedom. I began working as a freelance web developer on the side, keeping the money I made hidden because I thought I might need it in the future. That intuition was correct. In retrospect, I believe my parents had been preparing this for some time since, rather than throwing a party for my 18th birthday, they sat me down for what they called an important discussion. They clarified that my sister's playroom and learning area required my room. They had already made the decision that I would go right away. They completely shut me down when I attempted to explain that I needed time to find a place and save money. They said I'd had time to get ready and should be able to handle things myself. My father gave me a $500 envelope containing what he referred to as startup money, and gave me until the weekend to depart. It happened on a Tuesday. I stuffed my laptop, some clothes, and the about $3,000 I had surreptitiously collected from my freelancing business into my old high school backpack and a few trash bags. As I packed, my sister, who was only 3 years old at the time, watched from the doorway, unable to comprehend what was going on. The initial years were harsh. While being cautious not to overstay my welcome anywhere, I couch-surfed between friends' homes. I worked a variety of jobs, including day labor at construction sites, nighttime shifts at 7-Eleven, and freelance coding whenever I could find customers. In between employment, I would spend the day sleeping at public libraries, utilizing their computers to learn new programming languages and search for better prospects. I survived on whatever was on offer at the dollar store and ramen noodles. I sometimes went to bed hungry because I wasn't sure if I would have enough money for my next meal. The worst time of year was in the winter, when I occasionally had to decide between having enough food to eat and paying for a warm place to sleep. I made an effort to stay in touch with my parents during those formative years in spite of everything. I would periodically give them a call in the hopes of seeing even the slightest indication that they were concerned about my welfare. However, they were obviously waiting for the conversation to end, and each exchange was brief and awkward. They never inquired about my needs or how I was doing. They just remarked, "That's nice," and shifted the conversation to my sister's preschool accomplishments when I told that I was enrolled in community college courses while working. I quit trying after being the only one who reached out for 2 years. Even after I taught myself full-stack coding, they never gave me a call to see how I was doing or left a message on my birthday or on holidays. I recall being so desperate to let them know that I had arrived, but their phone had already been cut off. I learned so much about survival and independence in those first several years after being expelled. I continued to code while working several jobs. I would use my phone to study programming documentation during my breaks at the convenience shop. I would work on minor freelance assignments at the public library in between building site shifts. With free Wi-Fi, air conditioning, and, most importantly, computers where I could practice coding, the library turned into my haven. When a small firm decided to hire me as a junior developer, I finally got my break. My freelance work portfolio and my contributions to open source projects impressed them. Although the pay wasn't high by IT standards, it changed my life. I was able to buy a little studio apartment for the first time and was no longer concerned about where I would sleep every night. I pushed myself into the task, working 70-hour weeks and learning as much as I could about cloud computing, database administration, and system architecture. Like a sponge, I took it all in. After my coworkers saw how committed I was, I quickly took charge of modest initiatives. I kept working on open source projects and creating my own apps on the weekends and at night. I had discovered something I genuinely liked doing, so it wasn't just about the money anymore. When one of the big IT corporations saw my contributions to their open source platform, it was the true turning point. They extended an invitation for an interview, and following 6 rounds of technical interviews, I was offered a job that fundamentally altered my life. After 7 years, I am now in charge of a large project team as a senior software engineer. I have enough cash to feel secure about the future, a modern apartment in a safe building, and a solid investment portfolio. Before my father's number showed up on my phone 3 days ago, after 17 years of total silence, I believed I had finally put an end to my past. It was startling to hear his voice. His voice seemed older, almost frantic. "It couldn't wait," he added. They had to discuss my sister. I was left reeling by the discourse that ensued. "It looks like my 13-year-old sister is having a lot of problems. She frequently skips school, has been caught shoplifting several times, and hangs out with a group of older teens whom my parents disapprove of. More concerningly, she has had multiple encounters with local police authorities and drugs have been discovered in her room twice. 3 different rehabilitation programs have already been tried on her, but none of them appear to have been successful." When my father mentioned their financial predicament, it became evident why they had called. More than $200,000 has been spent on counseling sessions, various treatment programs, and legal bills. They had sold the majority of their valuables, maxed out many credit cards, and remortgaged their home. They are in dire need of assistance and are now considering a $75,000 specialist long-term treatment center. With tears in her eyes, my mother called and said they had nowhere else to go. The phrase, "family needs to stick together," and the fact that I am their only chance to save my sister were repeated by her. I was struck by the irony of hearing these remarks from the same folks who expelled me when I was 18 and never looked back. When I was sleeping in my car in between couch surfing arrangements, where was this sense of family unity? On all those evenings when I went to bed hungry, where was it? In addition to aid with their credit card debt and mortgage payments, they are requesting support with the costs of the treatment program. They require over $100,000 in total. If I couldn't give the entire money right away, my father even recommended that we arrange a payment schedule. To be honest, if I wanted to, I could assist them. I have a secure financial situation thanks to years of frugal living and wise investing. However, I feel physically uncomfortable at the idea of granting them access to my finances. I acquired this money by working hard and making sacrifices for years, frequently going without food and housing while learning to code. I can't sleep at night because of how complicated this scenario is. Since my sister is only a child, I feel bad for even considering helping. She never requested to be born into this mess, and perhaps things would have turned out differently if someone had supported me when I was a teenager. However, I then recall how my parents handled me, how they dismissed me without question and never once inquired about my whereabouts for 17 years. They contacted again yesterday, requesting a face-to-face meeting. They claimed to want to make amends and provide an explanation for everything. They offered to drive the 4 hours to visit me and proposed that we meet at a fancy restaurant in my neighborhood. Their zeal unnerves me in some way, as if they're making an excessive effort to sway events to their advantage. According to my partner, 34F, I should set clear limits. She has personally witnessed the amount of effort I have put into rebuilding my life and getting over my childhood trauma. She fears that allowing my parents to return could reverse years of emotional growth. Although he thinks I owe my parents nothing, my best buddy, who let me sleep on his sofa during those difficult early years, advises me to think about assisting my sister directly if I so choose. I'm totally conflicted right now. My rational side tells me to keep the distance that has helped me succeed. My parents still view me as a resource to be utilized rather than a beloved son, thus they haven't changed. Their true motivations are evident from the way they are handling this matter, concentrating on the money rather than trying to make atonement for the past. However, my emotional side keeps thinking about my sister, a disturbed adolescent who may be misbehaving due to the same poisonous familial dynamics from which I fled. By refusing to assist, am I sustaining the abandoning cycle, or would aiding merely make my parents' manipulation possible? Those terrifying evenings spent sleeping in my car taught me to never take for granted the life I've worked so hard to create. I feel like I'm being pulled back into the craziness that I've been trying to avoid for years. Should I assist them and run the danger of being manipulated again? Do I make an effort to assist my sister directly? Or should I continue to set the boundaries that have helped me recover and grow? I'm sure I'll question any decision I choose. I might be angry with them for dragging me back in if I assist. I could always question whether I could have changed my sister's life if I didn't. This decision is weighing me down, and I could really use some outside insight. First update. I chose to meet my folks at a downtown coffee shop after reading your advice and comments. I reasoned that being in a public setting would help maintain decorum and provide me with a convenient way to leave if necessary. I was immediately struck by how much they had aged when I first saw them enter. In addition to having black circles under their eyes and a lot more gray hair than I could recall, they were worn out. They didn't take long to delve into specifics. It seems that my sister's problems are more serious than they first said over the phone. She has had to attend several rehabilitation programs, all of which they have had to pay for out of pocket, in addition to her substance abuse and legal issues. She hasn't gone to a full week of classes in months, so she's not just missing school periodically. She frequently slips out with individuals who are obviously a bad influence, frequently going missing for days at a time. My parents weren't lying to me about their financial circumstances. They showed me their phone records. To pay for these costs, they have sold the majority of their prized assets, including the house I grew up in. They are currently having financial difficulties and live in a tiny apartment. According to their estimates, they will only be able to survive for a few more months if they sell some family artifacts. I felt uneasy because of this underlying expectation that pervaded our talk. My duty as their son, to assist them, was one of the family obligations they constantly bringing up. They seem to assume that just because we are related, I would step up regardless of what they had done in the past. It was evident from the way they spoke that they hadn't really acknowledged their previous treatment or truly digested how they had wronged me. I could feel all of my previous hatred and rage rising as they continued. None of this was their fault, in their opinion. They dismissed my expulsion at the age of 18, claiming it was just parenting, and that they had acted in the best interests of the family, at the time. They behaved as though their treatment of me was entirely appropriate. They now expected me to overlook everything and intervene to solve their issues. I came to see that they were seeking a solution, not understanding or forgiveness. And my money was that solution to them. I was their final option because they needed someone to shoulder the financial load of all the choices they had made over the years. I listened to what they had to say before firmly telling them that I was unable to assist them. I clarified that when they abandoned me, I had put a lot of effort into starting a life on my own and that I was no longer in a position to help them, either morally or emotionally. I was clear that I didn't feel obligated to get them out of a situation that they had established for themselves. My refusal was not well received by them at all. Their tone altered entirely, and their expressions hardened. They accused me of being callous for not assisting my sister, branded me selfish, and claimed that I was leaving my family. Their eyes were filled with disappointment and rage, which I could see. It reminded me of my early years. Nothing had changed. They continued attempting to use guilt to make me feel as though I owed them money. I was more conflicted as I left that meeting than when I arrived. I feel somewhat relieved that I defended myself and established boundaries. However, another part of me feels bad, as if I'm abandoning them when they're at their lowest. It's difficult to describe, but it seems weird to leave them in this way even if I know they profoundly wounded me. I can't stop thinking about my sister, whom I don't even know, and their predicament. Although I'm sorry for her, I don't think I can help her. It hurts to know that even after all these years, my parents still only regard me as a tool to solve their problems rather than as a unique person with a life and challenges of my own. It's difficult for me to let go of the guilt. Is it wrong of me to persist with my choice? Should I have looked for a compromise? I can't stop reliving the encounter in my head, questioning whether I made the proper decision. Second update. Since my last post, which was only a week ago, things have gotten even more bizarre. Only a few hours earlier, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I heard my sister's voice for the first time when I responded. I was completely unprepared for this. I only have hazy memories of her from when she was a newborn, just before I moved out. The call got off to an unexpectedly good start. Considering what I had heard about her behavior, I was surprised to hear a courteous, almost pleasant voice. She started by requesting that I assist our parents with their present financial predicament. It was evident that she had practiced this pitch because she was making a big deal out of how they were having trouble and how I could save the family. I made an effort to respond politely but firmly, stating that I had to make the best choices for myself because of the complexity of my connection with our parents. Everything changed at that point. Her attitude changed abruptly. In a matter of seconds, she switched from being courteous to becoming enraged, accusing me of being self-centered and leaving her to handle our parents' problems. She had always been envious of her and insisted that I was abandoning my family. She said I was being arrogant since I had left and begun living on my own, whereas they had been my backers the entire time. I was stunned by what she said. They had a hauntingly familiar sound, as if she were repeating something she had heard countless times. She talked about my assistance with such arrogance, as though she really thought I had a duty to intervene and make everything right. I was so shocked that I was unable to react. I was being forced to make up for years of decisions I had nothing to do with by this person I had never dated. She hung up before I had a chance to comprehend her emotional outburst. I tried to make sense of everything as I sat there looking at my phone. What was the source of this animosity? Why did she believe I had left her? I required clarification. I was determined to find out what was happening, so I called my folks. I immediately questioned them whether they had been telling my sister that I had left them and her behind when they first picked up the phone. After a revealing silence, they eventually came clean. They had been giving my sister an entirely distorted explanation for my departure for years. They informed her that they had severed their relationship with her out of spite and that I couldn't bear to share their attention with a younger sibling. I was portrayed as a conceited older brother who left the family because I was envious of her. They had completely removed from their story the fact that they had made me feel alienated from the day she was born and expelled me as soon as I became 18. It was as if someone had taken my breath away. My sister has grown up thinking that I was the bad guy in this tale. Given that she had been fed misinformation about who I was and why I left, it's no wonder she felt as though I had abandoned her. She had been carefully kept in the dark about the fact that my parents had made me feel unwelcome from birth and had evicted me from the house. That realization caused me to hang up on them. Although it has just been a few hours since our previous talk, they haven't made another attempt to get in touch. I'm upset with my parents for misrepresenting me to my sister and giving her the impression that I abandoned her, but I'm also upset with my sister for snapping at me and demanding my assistance as though I owed it to her. It's difficult to get rid of this resentment, but I'm also experiencing a new form of guilt. I wish my parents had been honest with her about my reasons for leaving. Perhaps my relationship with my sister would have been different if they had. Although I might not have been able to provide financial support to my parents, I could have developed a relationship with my sister and perhaps helped her steer clear of some of these behavioral problems. Now, though, it seems impossible to repair the harm. Even whether I want to try is up in the air. My family returned in the worst conceivable way, just when I thought I was done with them forever, which makes the whole scenario tiring. It's not that easy for me, even if a lot of commenters have advised me to simply ban my parents and move on. Whatever you want to call me, this is still family, and I believe that I should at least be aware of what's happening. Even though I'm in no position to provide financial support for my family, I can't help but notice that this is the first time they've contacted me. Nevertheless, I can see that my sister is too engrossed in their version of events to see things any other way, and my parents are still attempting to control the situation to achieve their goals. I'm at a loss on what to do. I can't get rid of the sense that any decision I make will be the wrong one. I'm even more convinced that keeping my distance is the proper decision after the way they've misrepresented the reasons for my departure. I feel bad for my sister though. Her conduct and relationships are obviously being impacted by the skewed perspective of her family history that she was raised with. I wonder if this damage can be fixed or if it's best to leave it alone. Third update. Since my last update, which was a few months ago, I've had plenty of time to think things through and let things calm down. It's been quieter for me, to be honest, but only because I choose to avoid the mess my sister and parents had produced. I'm coming to realize that sometimes taking a step back and avoiding letting their drama take over my life is the greatest way to achieve serenity. My parents gave me another call about a month after I had last provided an update. I wanted to hear what they had to say, so even though I was dreading it, I picked up. They were even more desperate this time, and they accused me of being dishonest in order to get money from me. They described the dreadful situation, how they were in danger of losing everything, and how they wanted me to intervene and make things right. The guilt trip about family is supposed to stick together was their first attempt. When that failed, they resorted to threats, claiming that if I didn't assist them, they would ruin my life. They then claimed that I was their only hope, changing their strategy once more. To be honest, I felt disgusted. They continued to threaten me in spite of everything that had transpired, and they never once stopped to admit how poorly they had treated me. I refused to back down and reiterated that I was unable to provide them with financial support and that I was not responsible for solving their issues. I reminded them that I wasn't responsible for cleaning up the mess. They had made these decisions. Of course, that did not make them pleased. For the next month, they continued to phone, alternating between threats and guilt trips. They eventually stopped phoning. I assumed they had finally come to the conclusion that I would not give in. I didn't hear back from them for a month, and to be honest, I thought that might be it. However, I received another call around a week ago. I nearly didn't answer, but my curiosity won out. Things had only deteriorated. They informed me that they needed to file for bankruptcy. They were essentially starting over with nothing after selling nearly all they owned to pay off their debts. They then revealed even more shocking detail. My sister had moved in with one of her friends and had severed all ties with them. Even though she is just 13, she managed to move in with a friend's family, who my parents claim tolerates her misbehavior. They said it was best that my sister left them because they could no longer see themselves supporting her when I questioned why they didn't call the police. In a sense, they have also abandoned their second child. They initially attempted to place the blame on me. They claimed that none of this would have occurred if I had simply assisted them when they requested it. They said that everything went south because of me. Naturally, they were unable to acknowledge their own responsibility for their acts. I was furious. I bluntly told them that their actions and how they had treated me were to blame for everything that was happening to them. I brought up the topics of how they treated me like a second-class person in my own house, how they neglected me when I needed them, and how they expelled me when I reached 18. I informed them that they continued to try to place the responsibility on me while ignoring the fact that that had an impact on me. At that point, they began to retreat and eventually ceased making excuses. They expressed regret for everything they had done to me and offered an apology. They expressed to me their wish that they had acted differently. They seemed to be saying everything that needed to be said, but it was too late. In addition to the fact that they had ruined my sister's and my own lives, I couldn't simply ignore how they had treated me for years. They were now suffering the repercussions of their decision to push me away. I must admit that I felt sorry for them, but I also realized that I couldn't risk the life I had created for myself in an attempt to mend what was already damaged. I informed them that I needed to keep my distance and that I was unable to assist. Despite their displeasure, I stood by my choice. I was still upset with them for what they had done to me after I hung up. However, I felt sorry for them at the same time. It's too late now, but I wish they had taken the time to realize what they were doing incorrectly when they had the chance. I've come to terms with the fact that I can't save them, and I'm learning to accept that. I have no idea what the future holds for my sister or them. I just know that I won't let their errors disturb my tranquility. They can't drag me back into their mess. I've come too far. I have much more important things to worry about right now, but maybe in the future I'll try to get in touch with my sister once more to see if I can assist her get back on track. All I can do is hope she takes this lesson to heart and makes wiser decisions than our parents did. That's about it for me, then. I won't be checking in on my family for a very long time. Even though I'm aware that this isn't the best conclusion, I've come to terms with it. I sincerely appreciate all of your guidance and encouragement over this trip. It has enabled me to remain steadfast in my choices. My mother-in-law locked me in a bathroom during labor to stop me from stealing the spotlight at her daughter's wedding. I woke up in the hospital later. 2 weeks ago, my husband Richard, Rick M30, and I, F29, welcomed a daughter into the world. We are certainly thrilled to have our first child. Our lives have been extremely hectic as we get used to being parents. We're doing our best, but it's a difficult shift for us both. Due to the events surrounding the birth of our daughter May, we are not really able to get much assistance. I don't think I'll ever be able to forget it because it was one of the most horrific events in my life. I can't get over the crippling fear I experienced that day, not even the joy of May's birth. Without my husband's prompt assistance, I believe I would have passed away. Since May is the family's eldest child, I believe that we should be a little kinder to them despite the terrible incident. But I'm not sure, and all these hormones and infant responsibilities are impairing my judgment. I've gone to Reddit for assistance because of this. Please be patient with me since this narrative may be lengthy and feature many characters. Rick's sisters are Emma and Anna. At 28 and 24, respectively, they are both younger than him. I think there is no hostility between us, and I get along well with both of them. Due to our hectic work schedules and infrequent meetings, we are not particularly close. Emma doesn't even reside in the same city as us, but we still make an effort to stay in touch by calling or texting her occasionally. My mother-in-law, Rachel, F53, is another significant figure in Rick's family and in this narrative. I get along well with Anna and Emma, but Rachel is a very different matter. I don't precisely agree with Rachel. I genuinely believe that she has an issue with everyone, not just myself. She simply never stops being the biggest control freak you can think of. Rachel wants everything to happen the way she wants it to. Since she was the one who reared her children after their father abandoned them, all three of them generally respect her desires. They make an effort to simplify their own lives. She does, however, react if someone tries to desire something different from what she desires. From dissatisfaction and moping to a full-blown meltdown with tears and tantrums, the response might vary widely. I try to avoid her as much as I can since it gets hard to cope with her. Rick is aware of this. He allows me to keep my distance and handle his mother however I see fit because he knows she is problematic. I let it go because, despite her domineering behavior, I can relate to how he feels about her. She doesn't interfere in my life because she doesn't like me, which is good for everyone. But a few days earlier, she was solely to blame for things being out of control. Nobody can ever forgive her, in my opinion. Anna was getting married the day May was born. Her husband Jonah, M30, is actually Rick's friend, and the wedding was beautiful. About a year ago, he asked her to marry him. I had agreed to be a bridesmaid when Anna asked me to. But I knew I couldn't handle that, so when Rick and I learned I was expecting, I had to ask her to ask someone else. There were just 6 months left before the wedding, nearly 6 months after the proposal. I was 3 months pregnant at the time, and I knew I had to put my priorities first. I had anticipated criticism from Anna for abandoning me in the middle. Before I told her, I was twitchy and really anxious. I was relieved and surprised that our connection would not be permanently impaired, as I had expected. When I informed Anna, she was ecstatic. When I told her that I wouldn't be available for tasks, she actually forgot about her wedding for a bit. Her answer was to concentrate on looking after me. In order to avoid me missing the wedding, which I would have if May had been born at that time, she even thought about moving it. For a variety of circumstances, that ultimately didn't occur, and to be honest, she shouldn't have done it in the first place. Even though it ended up being a near call, she remained there for me the entire time. I didn't bother the two sisters much during my pregnancy, which was terrifying for me, because Emma was the maid of honor and I knew they were busy getting ready for the wedding. They both came over, helped me a lot, and kept in touch as much as they could. Although Anna stood by me the entire time, I feel a little bad for not being there for her on the most significant day of her life. My mother-in-law was the only one who seemed a little angry about the whole situation. The wedding preparations were somewhat disrupted, and I believe she was irritated that I could no longer serve as the maid of honor. I could see where she was coming from, and that looked like the only sensible explanation. But even after Anna was comfortable with the pregnancy and my not being the maid of honor, the animosity, for want of a better term, persisted. Even though the bride wasn't angry at all, Rachel somehow began to irritate me after that. It was strange, but I reasoned that perhaps she was nervous due to the wedding, and I was tense due to hormones. I persuaded myself that this was merely fabricating stories in my mind. I did my best to ignore her, and everything was good. During the wedding, everything literally and figuratively went out of control. When it happened 2 weeks ago, I was insanely pregnant. My belly was enormous, my feet were bloated, and I thought I may faint. Nevertheless, Anna wanted me to be at the wedding, so I wanted to go. I wanted it to be her day, so I had asked her whether she wanted me to be there in advance. I informed her that I didn't want the attention to be diverted from her by the appearance of a hugely pregnant woman. The bride and groom should enjoy their wedding days, and I would hate to be the one to ruin that. Anna was genuinely insulted and saddened when I told her this. She stated she couldn't believe I wouldn't go to her wedding and instead fill my mind with this pointless concept. She claimed that all she wanted was for her family to be present to support her on her wedding day and that she didn't care about fame or attention. She urged me not to worry about drama and that I had to come. She meant it, and I knew it. She doesn't hold back when speaking. She would have told me straight out if she didn't want me there. However, she did, and with great vigor. I felt that I had a responsibility to support her. Therefore, I knew I had to be there for her on her wedding day despite my physical discomfort. I'll be honest. I tried my best to ignore the many mumbling voices because I knew Anna was glad I was there. For me, that was all that mattered at the time. Rachel glared at me the entire time and didn't say much to me. However, I was too uneasy to pay attention or notice. I simply left her alone because I lacked the energy to confront her or explain her passive-aggressive actions. I wasn't going to respond to her, so she could glare all she wanted. Then came the major event that deeply stunned and damaged everyone around me, including myself. Just before the ceremony started, I started to feel apprehensive. Since I had previously met Anna, I decided to go upstairs in the hopes of feeling better and would come back afterward. I was unaware that Rachel was following me. I went to the bathroom because I felt strange and sweaty. My water suddenly broke. It was a real flood, and I began to panic because, despite my deepest love for my daughter, she had arrived at the worst possible time. I was unable to think clearly. Fortunately, my mother-in-law was in front of me. I was crouched in agony by then. We had to hurry to the hospital, so I instructed her to grab my phone and call Rick right away as she hurried up to me. I handed her my phone as she helped me up and forced me to sit in the restroom. She lost it at that point. Because she didn't want me to take Anna's attention away from her, she promised to make sure Rick arrived an hour after the ceremony ended. I told her that I couldn't possibly tolerate this for an hour and asked if she was crazy. I attempted to grab my phone from her, but she took it with her and locked me inside. There I was, sitting on a toilet in a restroom, practically on the verge of giving birth, without a spouse or a phone. I'm not sure how I avoided having a full-blown panic attack, but I'm glad I didn't because I'm not sure what might have occurred if I had. I stood up, walked slowly over to the door, and began hammering on it. I kept screaming, but nobody could hear me because the restrooms were on the first floor and everyone was already seated for the wedding. I yelled until I could no longer be heard, but nobody arrived. I honestly thought I was going to die at that point and take my child with me. I had lost my voice, was soaked, sweating profusely, and was fatigued. I don't recall anything else after that. I'm not sure what transpired after I fainted from tiredness. I know I went to the hospital, but I can't even recall how I got there. A few hours later, I woke up in the hospital, sobbing with Rick at my side. It took me a few moments to figure out where I was and what was going on. I thought the worst when I noticed Rick crying. I assumed May didn't make it, and everything came rushing back, including Rachel shutting me in the bathroom and my tears. Rick let out a sigh of relief and began sobbing in my arms as soon as he realized I was awake. I felt sick to my stomach and was unsure of how to interpret it. Then, with a breath of relief, I saw the nurse enter carrying a baby girl. Since Rick was playing me like that, I really wanted to slap him, but he insisted he wasn't. I was unconscious when he found me in the bathroom, so he was just glad I was all right. When I held my kid for the first time, I think I will always remember that moment. There isn't a better feeling in life, in my opinion. There is nothing that can ever compare to how I felt at those times. Since I didn't have the energy to cope with it at that point, I'm glad Rick didn't give me any details. I asked him what was going on because I could hear some noise outside. Rachel wanted to come in and see her granddaughter, he added. I explained everything that had transpired to him. I explained to him what she had done and how she had needlessly put our daughter in risk. I also informed him that I would never again permit her to be close to my daughter. She was dead to me. Rick claimed to be an expert. Rachel sobbed and told him everything when he found me in that way. I informed him that I would not forgive her simply because she had a breakdown. He chuckled and declared that he would file charges for life endangerment and that his mother was dead to him from now on. He promised to take legal action to ensure she was held accountable for her actions. His words made me feel as though a burden had been removed from my shoulders. All three of them adore their mother, and I know he does, but I wasn't in the mood to forgive her after the stunt she pulled that might have killed me and my daughter. Our marriage would have ended if Rick had picked her over me. After that, there would have been no turning back. I secretly hoped that he would pick his mother, who had done a great deal to raise children in spite of everything. I'm not complaining at all, even though I may not have expected him to defend me in that manner. In fact, if it's possible, it has increased my affection for him. He told me the wedding went well when I asked how it went. In order to come see us, Emma and Anna were waiting for him to call. He laughed when I inquired if Anna was upset, telling me that I didn't need to be concerned about her at all. She has been beaming with happiness and pride, saying that May's birth was the greatest gift she could have had and that her entire family attended the wedding. When he told me that, I was crying and begged him to call them right away. Jonah, Emma, and Anna joined me at the hospital in a matter of minutes. The greatest part was that Jonah and Anna were still dressed for their wedding, and Anna declared that she couldn't resist the opportunity to snap a wedding photo with her niece. It was such a touching moment that I burst into tears. I apologized to Anna for spoiling her day after the photo. She gave me a hug and told me that I was seeing things incorrectly because I had brightened her day. The only thing I did wrong, according to Anna, was not alerting them sooner. I informed her about my mother-in-law's actions ever since we announced the pregnancy. They could have stopped her drama, she thought. When I told Anna that I didn't want to start any problems, Emma added that as long as I was safe, any mischief was okay. When I realized they loved me like family, I started crying even as I typed this. To them, I was more than simply Rick's wife, I was family. One of the greatest women I've ever met is Anna. It's no surprise that she is where she is now because she is so content and safe. How Rachel is so different from her kids is beyond me. They seem to have recognized that she wasn't what they wanted to be after seeing her. Anna had told Rachel on her way in that she would see to it that Rick and I filed charges, but apparently Rachel was still outside. I didn't want Emil close to me, but she wanted to come in and meet May. We must protect ourselves from her, Anna remarked. She felt she hadn't addressed her mother's overprotective tendencies or made it apparent that she didn't mind my pregnancy, so she apologized to me. Perhaps the situation could have been prevented if she had, she claimed. I assured her that she was not at fault because she had given me a sense of security. Rick was outside conversing with Mil the entire time. 2 to 3 days after my discharge, Rick informed me what he and Mil had discussed when I returned home with May. He said that nothing would alter his decision to bring charges, which he had already told her he would do. He also informed her that she would never be permitted to be in May's life. In every way, she was not her grandma. Rick clarified that she had decided to endanger both our unborn child's and my lives over a perceived offense that didn't even bother her. Additionally, he informed her that the entire amount of money she had been relying on from Rick and Emma would be drastically cut. She broke down in tears and claimed she didn't deserve this as she had dedicated her entire life to raising her children. Rick informed her that although he was grateful for everything she had done for them, it did not provide her authority over their life. He said that she was at fault and that he had been putting up with or overlooking everything she did for years, but that he was done. She had gone too far and demonstrated that she was unsafe to be around when it came to May and me. Her reasoning didn't hold water, especially since Anna and I never had an issue together. As a mother, Rachel acknowledged that Anna hadn't intended for me to take center stage. When Anna heard this, she attacked her. We are definitely moving on with the case, but Rick will take care of it because I can't handle this turmoil and I have a newborn to look after. I'll take care of it, Rick responded. The siblings no longer want to speak with her. Rick and I clearly don't communicate with her. Emma only speaks to her when it's absolutely necessary, and Anna has shut her off completely. Mil probably didn't expect this. Despite how twisted that seems, it's possible that she truly believed she was protecting Anna. Even though I have no intention of defending her, I still feel sorry for her because everything went so wrong. It feels wrong and bad to me now, and I'm wondering if they should speak it out with her. Maybe I'm not thinking clearly, but I'm not sure. I'm certain that Rick will lose it if I bring this up to him. He can't even look at her at the moment since he is so mad with her. This isn't what I expected, yet here we are. Update. Reconciliation is permanently out of the question. I realize I haven't posted in a while, but I've been busy taking care of myself and my child as a new mother. Fortunately, May will be 8 weeks old in a few days, and we are all quite happy about it. Jonah and Anna have been tremendously helpful to Rick and myself. Emma calls nearly every day, but she had to return to work. Everyone's eyes are actually brightened by May. They swoon over her, and her photos are all over the group chat. MIL has not been contacted. I persuaded Rick that filing charges would be pointless because we already had too much on our plate. Since neither of us had the energy for anything else, Rick reluctantly consented. Last week, Emil seemed appreciative when we told her. I use the word appeared, since last week the woman, who is truly insane, revealed her actual nature to everyone. Rick and I awoke to a loud knock on the door at around 1 in the morning. Rick went to open the door, but I fled and hid with May because I assumed it was a robbery. I heard shouting, but I was afraid to venture out for fear of waking May. As it happened, it was MIL. According to Rick, she was acting irrationally, yelling that we couldn't keep her away and that she needed to see May. Before she left, Rick had to threaten her with the cops. She was attempting to break in. Since everyone needed to know if something was wrong with her, we informed Anna and Emma right away. She texted us unsettlingly the following day. She began by claiming that we were punishing her because her sole transgression was becoming a mother and that we were being cruel and horrible to her by denying her access to May. Her text eventually became more disorganized, but there was still more melodramatic rubbish in it. She claimed that parenting 3 children was a burden and that she was constantly balancing the needs of one child over those of the others. She said that because she didn't want May to ruin Anna's birthday, she felt compelled to do that on May's birthday. Conveniently, she failed to remember that May was actually a fetus, and Anna had repeatedly stated that she had no problem with the pregnancy and wedding taking place simultaneously. This part made sense to me, but what she said next startled me. She acknowledged that she was concerned she wouldn't be as significant to her children now that May was in our life. She assumed Anna would be upset when I told her I was pregnant since that's how a normal woman would feel. She didn't like it though, when she realized that we were all thrilled about the wedding and the pregnancy. In essence, she expressed her disapproval of the fact that we were all content with one another and with each other. She wanted us to be competitive and envious. She admitted that she hoped Anna would be upset with us when she realized the due date would be close to the wedding, so that May wouldn't steal the show. However, that did not occur. May was the only topic of conversation. She claimed that the fact that an unborn child had replaced her as the siblings' unifying element made her feel degraded. She kept sending texts like this, and when I requested Rick to block her, she was still typing. I informed him that she was dangerous for May and us all since she was insane. Since seeing those messages, I've been suffering from a persistent headache. It's unbelievable that a woman in her 50s is competing against a 7-week-old child. I'm done with her, therefore it doesn't make sense to me and doesn't have to. I'm done defending her actions and attempting to figure out why she did them. I don't care if she ends up in hell. Anna and Emma were also distressed when we forwarded the messages to them. They believe she may be experiencing a manic episode. Emma promised to fly down and get MIL examined in a facility. Although I think it's an excellent idea, I will not be getting involved. I no longer want to interact with her because of her insane behavior. Second update. A restraining order has been issued against MIL. We're exercising caution, but she hasn't tried anything else. Emma consulted with a doctor and a psychologist and had her tested. Physically, everything is good with MIL. Her diagnosis was limited to generalized anxiety disorder. The doctors advised Emma to take her to treatment, stating that there was no underlying medical cause for her behavior. Since then, Emma has not gotten in touch. She stated that she was ready to assist if something went wrong, but she can no longer put up with MIL's hatred. I completely understand and agree with that. If she had a mental illness, I might have sympathized with her and supported her, but now that it has been ruled out, we can be certain that this is who she is. With such, there is no reconciliation. We received the restraining order for this reason. Her safety is the top priority for Rick, May, and myself, and Mill has shown herself to be unsafe twice. Furthermore, she harbors animosity for May in particular, so we need to be even more cautious that they avoid each other. I hope I never have anything else to say about this entire experience, and I believe this will be my final update. The family has been through a lot, and I'm simply thankful that we're all safe. Am I the asshole for refusing to give my $75,000 restaurant savings to my sister's Ivy League dreams and getting kicked out? To open my own tiny restaurant, I, a 25-year-old, had been saving for years. My dream has always been to start my own restaurant and work as a chef. I worked toward this objective with every cent I made from both full-time and part-time jobs after graduation. I saved $75,000 after working hard and living frugally for 7 years. Although they were aware of my dream, my parents dismissed it as a passing fad. In order to save money on rent, I moved in with them, which accelerated my goal-achieving process. I should have moved out sooner, looking back. The golden child is my younger sister, who is 19F. She is my parents' clear favorite and is excellent at everything. They never failed to make comparisons between us, elevating her while ignoring me. My sister was accepted to an Ivy League university last month to pursue a master's degree. Although my parents were overjoyed, the living expenses and tuition significantly outstripped their expectations. They convened a family meeting one evening. I assumed it was to talk about my sister's acceptance, but instead they wanted me to donate all of the money I made from my business to her schooling. I was taken aback. As though anticipating this, my sister sat there smugly. My parents were waiting for me to agree as they gave me an eager gaze. When I was hesitant, my mother started stressing the value of education and the fact that this was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Family comes first, according to my dad, and I should encourage her to pursue her goals. It was unbelievable to me. What about the years I'd spent working hard and my dreams? I explained how much the money meant to me and how close I was to reaching my goal when I informed them I couldn't. Their attitude changed instantly. My mother broke down in tears and accused me of being self-centered. When my dad raged that I was betraying the family and that he had always been envious of my sister's success, his face flushed crimson with rage. My sister didn't state that she didn't want my money or even defend me. She obviously felt entitled to it. The dispute swiftly got out of hand. I was guilt-tripped by my parents, who said that allowing me to live rent-free was a great favor because they had given up everything for us. Conveniently, they disregarded the housework and upkeep I had performed while I was residing there. I remained steadfast, declaring that although I loved my sister and wanted her to succeed, I couldn't let go of my own goals. Like other students, I advised her to take out student loans or postpone for a year in order to save money. Outrage erupted in response to this suggestion. For even implying that my sister should have to struggle or postpone her education, my mother accused me of being callous. According to my father, I should be the older brother and take care of my sister because taking out loans was too risky. The dispute continued for hours. It always got worse when I believed it couldn't. Every error I had ever committed and every flaw my parents saw in me was brought up. They often made negative comparisons between me and my sister. It felt like long-suppressed animosity was being let go. At last, my father threatened to throw me out of the house if I didn't give my sister the money. He offered me a day to choose between packing my things and turning over my funds. I was taken aback. It was unbelievable to me that they would progress thus far. A larger part of me understood that if I gave in now, I would be bitter against them for the rest of my life, but a smaller part of me wanted to give in to maintain harmony and avoid losing my family. Along with my money, I would also have to give up my goals and my sense of self-worth. That night, I tossed and turned, considering my possibilities. I had made up my mind by dawn. I got to work packing. My parents looked surprised when they saw me. I suppose they genuinely thought I would comply with their requests. My mom tried one more time to get me to change my decision while I was packing my car. She warned me that I would always regret this and that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. My dad's expression was a mask of despair and rage as he stared from the window. At last, my sister spoke up, but not to support me. She accused me of being self-centered and claimed that she was always aware of my lack of concern for her. I did care for her in spite of everything, but I couldn't burn myself alive to keep her warm, so her comments hurt more than my parents. I had a range of feelings as I drove away from the house where I grew up, including fear, sadness, and rage, but I also felt relieved. I had the impression that a burden had been removed. I had defended myself against my family's irrational expectations for the first time in my life. The initial days were difficult. While I searched for an apartment, I stayed with a friend. My folks bombarded my phone with messages that alternated between violent outbursts and guilt trips. For my own peace of mind, I banned their phone numbers. When word spread around the extended family, opinions diverged. Some family members backed me up, claiming my parents were being irrational. Others accused me of being ungrateful and self-centered, siding with my parents. It was a complete disaster. I put myself into my restaurant plans after finding a tiny place. It was thrilling and challenging, especially without the network of support I believed I had. I had complete power over my life and my choices for the first time. Months passed. According to rumors, my sister had chosen to postpone entrance for a year in order to work and accumulate savings. I was unhappy that it had come to this, but I also felt somewhat justified. A few times, my parents tried to get back together, but only if I continued to pay my sister the money. I remained steadfast in my choice. Our relationship was still tense and aloof. 6 months later, I'm almost done negotiating a lease for a tiny restaurant location. It's a beginning, but not much. I am reminded that I made the proper decision with each step I take toward realizing my ambition. However, doubts do arise. As the day's thrill wanes late at night, I question whether I made the correct decision. Was I being self-centered, really? Was it right of me to give up something for my sister? Was my decision to shut off communication with my family an overreaction? I am aware of my parents' poisonous and deceptive actions. My sister was acting entitled, and I know it. Despite everything, I still miss them since they are my family. I can't help but question whether there was a more effective approach to deal with the circumstance. Reddit, did I make a mistake by refusing to part with my savings? Was it right of me to maintain my ground and follow my aspirations even if it meant sacrificing my ties with my family, or should I have found a medium ground? Edit 1. This really took off overnight. I appreciate all of your feedback and encouragement. I'll attempt to answer some frequently asked questions and offer some background. My sister has always been given preference by my parents, but it has never been this obvious. In retrospect, I can see that they consistently expected me to make minor sacrifices for her. Our parents' money plus a scholarship my sister received helped to cover the cost of her undergraduate studies. They didn't have enough saved because this master's program was unexpected. Some inquired about my sister's employment opportunities. Although her field of study has significant career potential, this is not a given. It appears that my parents believe this degree will help her in the future. Cultural expectations were brought up in a few remarks. Although not to this extent, it is typical in our culture for elder siblings to assist younger ones. My parents went too far, according to the majority of my cousins. If you're wondering why I didn't move out sooner, the answer is that I was attempting to save money, and living with parents till marriage is common in our culture. I now see how much power this gave my parents over me. Some said that in order to maintain harmony, I ought to have made a lower offer. My parents made it clear that it was all or nothing. They wanted the entire $75,000, but I gave it some thought. For those who are interested in the restaurant, it will be a small establishment that specializes in fusion cuisine, which blends flavors from the area with aspects of our cultural heritage. It's thrilling but frightening. Many people want to know if I keep in touch with my sister. I've made several attempts to contact her, but she either ignores me or replies with brief, uninteresting texts. I believe she accuses me of sabotaging her scheme. On the remarks on my parents' financial status, they are not having financial difficulties. They live comfortably and work well. They simply didn't want to take money out of their own retirement or savings accounts. Family therapy was recommended by some. I believe we all need space right now, but I'm open to it in the future. My parents have yet to admit that their desire was irrational. Again, I want to thank everyone for their support and insights. Hearing your viewpoints and sharing this tale has been healing. I'll keep you informed on the restaurant's progress. Edit 2. Since there is still interest in this post, here is another update. I've given the remarks that I should attempt to patch things up with my sister apart from my parents a lot of thought. Yes, she is young and may yet be influenced by them. I made the decision to get in touch with her once more, this time sending a longer email outlining my position. I was surprised when she answered. She wrote a confused and angry email. She acknowledged that she was conflicted about how our parents were handling it and wanted the chance I was denying her. She did, however, agree to meet next week to discuss the matter face to face. Regarding the restaurant, everything are moving along nicely. I completed the lease and got the improvements underway. Although it requires a lot of work, my confidence in my choice grows every day. A number of my friends have volunteered, and I am so grateful for their support. Since my last update, my parents have not gotten in touch. According to a cousin, they are informing relatives that I have left them. Even though it hurts, I'm making an effort to concentrate on the good things in my life at the moment. Some of you recommended that I write my parents a thorough letter outlining my thoughts and feelings. After the restaurant opens, I believe I'll do that. I need to put all of my attention into realizing this dream right now. Again, I want to thank you all for your help and guidance. It has been immensely beneficial throughout this challenging period. Update. I wanted to discuss what has transpired since my last post, which was nearly a year ago. Everything has changed, and I'm still getting used to it. The first piece of good news is that my restaurant is now open. It has now been open for around 4 months. It's tiny, like I always intended, and has a welcoming ambiance with a cuisine that blends regional flavors with traditional foods from our culture. Although the initial weeks were quite hectic, things have begun to settle down. Although we haven't made a lot of money yet, we are breaking even and gaining a devoted clientele. I've even been able to hire a dishwasher, a part-time server, and 2 line cooks. Every minute feels worthwhile, even though I've been working non-stop, often 14-hour days. I'm living out my dream right now. My friends and my few remaining family members' support has been crucial. Now for the unexpected turn of events. I heard the bell over the door ring yesterday while I was getting ready for the dinner service. After I announced that we weren't yet open, I heard a voice I recognized say, "I'm not here as a customer." My sister was the one. She appeared more worn out and less put together than I had recalled. We simply stared at one another for a while, unsure of what to say. The stillness was finally broken by her. She said, "I need a job," in a timid and low voice. "I was wondering if you had any openings." I was taken aback. The last thing I anticipated was this. For the first time in months, we had a conversation when I encouraged her to sit down. As it happened, her life had not gone as planned. Finding a job in her profession proved more difficult than she had expected, especially without the master's degree she had been banking on. She had postponed her enrollment to the Ivy League institution, hoping to work for a year and save money. She informed me that our parents were still upset with me. They accused me of sabotaging her opportunity to receive a prestigious degree. To pay for her education, they had been pressuring her to acquire a well-paying job, but she was starting to feel the effects of the strain. Unable to cope with their continual disappointment, she had left their home a month ago. I could see how much she had changed as she spoke. The haughtiness had vanished, and in its place came a humility I had never witnessed in her. She expressed regret for not defending me that day and acknowledged that she had been mistaken to feel entitled to my money. To be honest, I was a little depressed. We were sad about the time we had lost. I was saddened by the way our family had disintegrated. I promised to give the job some thought and get back to her. I'm conflicted now. On the one hand, her previous behavior still hurts me, and I'm concerned that hiring her could cause new issues or reopen old ones. However, she is requesting assistance, and she is my sister. For the hectic weekend shifts, I could also use an additional server. I have not yet made up my mind. I can't help but think what my parents would say if they found out she had turned to me for support. I question whether this is an opportunity to begin mending our relationship or if it's a recipe for catastrophe. So, Reddit, I'm in need of your counsel once more. Do I need to hire my sister? After everything that has transpired, is it prudent to combine family and business? Should I advise her to search elsewhere instead? I never imagined myself in this situation, deciding on my sister's destiny. I suppose life has a way of taking you by surprise. Any opinions or suggestions would be greatly valued. Last update. A few weeks have passed since my last post, and I've come to a decision I never would have imagined. I've made the decision to assist in paying for my sister's schooling after giving it some serious thought and having several lengthy discussions with her. I understand that considering all that has transpired thus far, this may come as a surprise, but listen to me. We began communicating more frequently after my sister arrived and asked for a job. I knew it would be very difficult to combine family and business at this time, so I didn't hire her at the restaurant. However, I saw from our chats how much she had developed and evolved over the previous 12 months. She acknowledged that she had been entitled and self-centered during the family argument and expressed regret for her actions. She informed me that the previous year had served as a wake-up call for her. Her struggle to make ends meet while working minimum wage jobs had changed her outlook on the importance of hard effort and money. Her statement that she now realized why my restaurant idea meant so much to me was what truly got to me. She had never before respected the amount of labor I had put into making it a reality. I also discovered that our parents continued to put pressure on her to pay for her education, making her feel inadequate for not being able to do it on her own. It brought back memories of the years I spent feeling below their standards. I gave it a lot of thinking before deciding. I assured her that I would cover half of her next year's tuition. Although it's not the entire sum my parents had previously requested, it's still a sizable donation that would enable her to begin her master's program without being deeply indebted. What made me choose to do this? I didn't do it because I felt guilty or obligated to. It's because I witnessed my sister's real transformation. I noticed someone who was making an effort to improve herself after learning some difficult lessons. In the end, I came to the realization that I did want to assist her, if I could, not at the expense of my own goals, but in a way that seemed right to me. I can now afford this without putting my restaurant's operations at risk because it is doing well enough. Being able to assist on my own terms is a pleasant feeling. When I told my sister, she became quite emotional. She sobbed and gave me a hug, saying she would work part-time to pay for her living expenses and that she would reimburse me eventually. I advised her to take full advantage of this chance as the greatest way to repay me. Our parents haven't been informed yet. Although I have no idea how they will respond, I am certain that my choice will remain the same regardless of the outcome. My sister and I are the only ones involved. I'm content with this decision. It feels right, even if it's not what I expected. Life occasionally offers you the opportunity to change how your narrative ends. I own this.